Chapter 1035. The prince merely glared at him, but the martial will in her body grew increasingly violent. It was like a huge dragon that was about to awaken. Xiaoshan seemed as if he had not noticed anything. He looked at the crowned princess' beautiful face, and his eyes revealed endless admiration, as well as blatant possessiveness. It was not that there were no beautiful women, but it was Xiaoshan's first time encountering one who was beautiful and as strong as the prince. This caused a feeling of admiration that he had never felt before to gush out from his heart. He couldn't help but raise his hand and touch the other's cheek. However, before he could get close, he was stopped by an invisible force. Xiaoshan smiled. "You're really cautious." The surface of the prince's body had been encompassed by her martial will. Even though her powers had stopped, they were still like layers of protection, protecting her and making it hard for Xiaoshan to get close. Xiaoshan shook his head. "Unless you're a heaven-blessed cultivator, it's impossible to break out of your current confinement. Even if you're 1,000 or 10,000 times stronger than me, it's useless. This is the difference between our realms. Give up." The prince did not say anything, but the intensity of the struggles in the spatial fragments grew increasingly greater. Her martial will seemed to have turned into tempestuous waves. As they undulated, it was as if they wanted to completely destroy the many spatial fragments. A hint of surprise flashed in Xiaoshan's eyes. What great power, but still useless. He shook his head and continued. "With our talent, who in this world will belong to? What's the point of trying to conquer the world? Don't you think that pursuing the profoundness of the human body, exploring the endless universe, and experiencing the great harmony of life is the true pursuit? If Sister Fairy is willing to give up on the imperial court, I'm willing to accompany you and exchange martial arts with you. We'll pursue the vast heavenly Tao together and stop caring about the worldly matters. We'll be a pair of immortal companions." Xiaoshan's gaze was sincere and fervent. There seemed to be great admiration in his eyes as he looked at the prince. It was as if he was looking at the most exquisite piece of art in the world. Looking at Xiaoshan's gaze, the prince seemed to be smiling coldly. However, the fury in the depths of her gaze grew increasingly stronger. What the prince hated the most in his life was being teased by a man, not to mention a brat who was still wet behind the ears. She said coldly, "In a moment, I will let you have a good taste of what is called the great harmony of life." Xiaoshan shook his head and was about to continue persuading her when his countenance suddenly changed. "That's not right. You've been hit by sword 23. How can you speak?" At the next moment, the prince's entire body trembled slightly. Streams of golden light emerged from her body, and the entire world seemed to start shaking. It was not a simple earthquake or hurricane. Instead, the entire space within a radius of 100 miles was shaking as a whole. Streaks of golden light pierced the sky, as if they were going to pierce through the entire world. Once Xiaoshan performed his sword 23, he would be able to confine his enemies in all the space with just a thought. Even a Heavenly Dipper realm expert would be like a fly or a mosquito in front of this move, easily crushed by him. But now that the prince was tied up, how could he be a fly or a mosquito? Xiaoshan felt as if he was restraining the legendary giant who created the world. "Ah!" An enraged bellow rang out from the prince's body, and piercing golden light burst out from her eyes and mouth. The atmosphere exploded, and the world trembled. Strong gales blew out in all directions with her body as the center, and crackling sounds rang out from many spatial fragments. What kind of joke is this? Xiaoshan looked at this scene in astonishment. The other party's powers had reached an unfathomable level, surpassing all the experts he had encountered before. He even suspected that even great Tao realm experts would not be able to reach such a level in terms of their powers. Violent powers were released incessantly from the prince's body, and even the space in the world was pushed back continuously. Each spatial fragment seemed to have exploded from the pressure, and they were forcefully pressed back together. Just like that, the separated space was pressed back together once again, allowing her to regain her mobility. The prince's entire body was encompassed by golden flames, and a suffocating pressure came from her body, causing the surrounding 5,000 soldiers from the Forbidden Army to faint. Fury seemed to have materialized, burning incessantly in her eyes as she looked at Xiao Shun. "How do you want to die?" Xiao Shun's countenance turned pale abruptly, and he looked at the prince as if he was looking at a ghost. "How is that possible? Other than heaven-blessed cultivators, how can there be anyone who can break free from these restraints?" Under this extremely focused state, the time and the surroundings seemed to have slowed down to Xiao Shun. However, he could only faintly see that the prince's right hand seemed to have moved a little, but it also seemed like it had not moved. At the next moment, a stream of golden light exploded, and the royal heavenly great palm imprint was slapped out. Violent powers instantly encompassed a range of 100 lis. With this furious attack, the prince's powers were truly unleashed. The ground within a range of 100 lis instantly sank and collapsed, turning into a huge palm imprint. Qing City's city walls collapsed in the distance, and the atmosphere turned into countless strong gales that swept out, causing sand and rocks to fly in the world. This was merely the weakest repercussive wave of power. At the spot where the prince's attack was aimed at, Xiao Shun's figure had already turned into nothingness. The space was like a net that was compressed to an extreme by the power of this attack. It mixed together with light and shadows, turning into a state of chaos. With a single move, Xiao Shun seemed to have been turned into dust. Several thousand meters away, Xiao Shun turned into a stream of lightning and cut across the sky. His countenance was already pale, and his mind was blank. Only that palm attack from earlier from the prince kept on replaying in his mind. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! There's really someone who could be so powerful to such an extent? He broke through the 23 swords with brute force. If it wasn't because I still have the 7 imperishable realms, I would have really died earlier. At this moment, Xiao Shun understood one thing deeply. The opponent he was facing was a monster that had surpassed the norm. It was a monster whose powers had broken through to another dimension. An opponent like this is no longer someone I can deal with. I must find someone else. Just as Xiao Shun was fleeing crazily, the prince threw an indifferent glance at the surrounding tents. She left behind a clone with 10% of her powers, while the remaining 90% darted out abruptly, shooting up into the sky. Golden light burst out from her eyes, as if sweeping through the entire world. Simultaneously, the sudden inspiration was activated at full power. Will you be able to escape? At the instant the prince activated the sudden inspiration, Xiao Shun, who was in the distance, seemed as if he had been struck by lightning. At this moment, he had the feeling that although the world was huge, it was hard for him to hide. He did not know how the prince had found him, nor did he know how she would attack him. Neither did he know when the attack would come. However, the warning signs in his heart kept on pounding crazily. It was as if the entire world was telling him and warning him that he was going to die. Under this extreme sense of danger, under the pressure of the crown princess life and death, Fang Xingjian's speed continued to increase, becoming faster and faster. In the end, as if he had broken through some kind of limit, a sense of comprehension suddenly appeared in Xiao Shun's heart. It was a sense of comprehension towards space-time, the world, and nature. Under the heavy pressure of the layers of danger, he had actually achieved the breakthrough that he had been dreaming of. Haha, I knew it. I'm a heaven-blessed cultivator. I'm destined to be someone. I won't die. With a soft bellow, Xiao Shun struck out a punch. The void space before him seemed to have encountered the Emperor's subjects, making way for him. A strange change occurred. The space was like a peeling wallpaper, continuously shattering and falling until a stretch of pitch-black void space was revealed. This was clearly a punch that could shatter void space. Then with a dash, Xiao Shun stepped into it and disappeared. Almost at the same instant Xiao Shun disappeared, an extremely powerful palm force arrived across the air. A terrifying explosion took place in the sky, and the dazzling golden light seemed to be visible even in the divine capital. Countless mountain ranges on the ground collapsed, and trees were blown into the sky by the strong gales. The prince threw a glance at the void space before him and activated the sudden inspiration once again. However, this time around, she was unable to sense the other party's existence. Damn it! The prince's eyes narrowed, and the fury in her heart was still burning fiercely. With her esteemed status, how could she tolerate being teased by a young lad? At the thought of young lads, the prince could not help but think of Feng Xingjian. At the thought of Feng Xingjian, the fury in her heart grew even stronger. I'm so angry. Then, Feng Xingjian was no match for him, and the man from earlier had escaped. There was naturally a need for her fury to be vented. Some women liked to shop when they were angry, some liked to eat delicacies when they were angry, and some liked to watch television when they were angry. The prince was clearly not an ordinary woman. Once she was angry, she would want to kill someone. Therefore, with a flash of golden light, she disappeared from Adair. Right now, in Qing City, the prowess of the battle between the prince and Xiao Shun had alarmed several million people in the city. Prince Xin looked at the Forbidden Army's tent that was in a state of chaos in the distance and cried out, "Did young hero Xiao do it?" He then looked at Qing City, where the terrain had changed drastically, and his eyes were filled with even more astonishment. The martial arts of these two people are like gods and demons. To think that there's a prowess that can change the world when they exchange blows. Standing next to Prince Xin were the three people from the 3 mountains, 4 peaks who had come to look for him earlier. All 3 of them were old men with white hair and beards. However, their figures were tall and straight, and their auras were deep. They had the air of sages. The skinny old man in the lead stroked his beard. Junior martial brother Zhao's martial arts have reached an unbelievable realm. He's just a step away from the legendary Great Dao realm. His victory is just a matter of time. A short and fat old man gathered gang cheese into his eyes, looked toward the camp in the distance, and said he should have succeeded. All 5,000 of the enemy soldiers have been knocked unconscious. Chapter 1036. Hearing their judgment, Prince Xin revealed a hint of joy on his face. However, there was a deep weariness in his eyes. Such a heavenly dipper sovereign is too great of a threat. Ordinary armies can't do anything to them. I'm afraid that only an army of 500,000 or more can surround them and directly suppress them with their aura. No wonder the former emperors of the state of Jin are so wary of the 3 mountains, 4 peaks. If it's a flourishing dynasty with 1 million soldiers and several thousand Disha realm experts, these Tiangang realm experts would naturally be able to suppress them. But once we enter a chaotic world, these Tiangang experts and sects in the pugilistic world will become an unstable factor that will stir up trouble. Although Xiao Shun had helped Prince Xin deal with his opponent this time around, this made Prince Xin increasingly wary of these pugilistic world experts. He thought about how, if he were to successfully unify the world, he would definitely train his troops, nurture an army of cultivators, and strive to wipe out these Tiangang realm experts. Compared to the demon sect, the 3 mountains, 4 peaks have occupied the Middle-earth for centuries. The strength they have accumulated is even more terrifying. Through this period of contact, Prince Xin had an increasing understanding of how unfathomable the 3 mountains, 4 peaks were. Compared to the 7 Tiangang realm experts that the demon sect had on the surface, the 3 mountains, 4 peaks were much stronger. At the very least, based on what Prince Xin knew, the 3 mountains, 4 peaks had at least 10 Tiangang realm experts. For example, the 3 old men in front of him were all Heavenly Dipper realm experts. It was precisely because of their accumulation that they were able to interfere with the situation of the world. There was also Xiao Shun. His performance in this battle made Prince Xin secretly shocked. The thin old man from the 3 mountains, 4 peaks nodded and said, "Your Highness Prince Xin, you can send people to clean up the battlefield. We'll be staying by your side to protect you when we recover the Serene region and attack the divine capital." The other short and fat old man laughed and said, "Don't worry. With the 3 of us protecting you, there aren't many people in this world who can hurt you." Prince Xin smiled as well. "Thank you, immortal seniors. After I take over the divine capital, I'll definitely treat you with the respect of the Imperial Preceptor. From now on, the 3 mountains, 4 peaks will be the national religion of Great Gene." When the 3 of them heard this, they exchanged glances with each other and revealed a trace of satisfaction in their eyes. Prince Exine asked again, "I wonder how Marie will be dealt with." During this period of time, Prince Exine had been gathering information to understand this female general who had beaten him up to the point where he was unable to retaliate. It was said that not only was her martial arts cultivation deep and unfathomable, but she was also a devastatingly beautiful woman. She was much more outstanding than the female disciples of the illusory emotions path. Therefore, Prince Exine also wanted to take a look. However, the thin old man immediately said with a serious expression, "Miss Marie is someone that junior brother Xiao thinks highly of. I'm afraid that she has already returned to the mountain with junior brother to discuss the Tao and concentrate on cultivation. Your Highness, it's best that you don't ask about it." The short and fat old man put it more bluntly. "Your Highness Prince Exin, although junior martial brother Xiao has outstanding talent, he's still a young man after all. He won't allow anyone to have any improper thoughts toward the girl he has taken a liking to. Your Highness, please do not make a mistake." Hearing this, Prince Exin almost exploded from anger. He was a descendant of the royal family and a hero. When had he ever been lectured like this? However, at the thought of Xiao Xin's skills, the 3 mountains, 4 peaks foundation, and the strength of the 3 people before him, he forcefully suppressed the fury in his heart. The corners of his lips curled up into a hint of an awkward smile as he said, "I've been rash." Seeing his respectful and submissive appearance, the 3 old men secretly nodded and broke into satisfied smiles. To the 3 mountains, 4 peaks, it was not important who the emperor was. What was important was whether the new emperor was obedient enough and how his attitude toward the 3 mountains, 4 peaks was. However, just then, a stream of light that was like thunderbolts and lightning flashed before everyone. It was a golden figure that descended from the sky within 0.001 seconds. Long air currents were dragged into the world, and sound waves radiated out. It was as if a myriad of thunderbolts had exploded at the same time, or as if a bolt of lightning had struck down into the mortal world from beyond the 9 heavens. Before the short and fat old man, who was still maintaining his smile, could react, the figure had already descended on his head at an extremely fast speed. Concurrently, a fair and tender palm pressed down slowly on his head. Everything happened at an extremely fast speed. When the palm that descended from beyond the 9 heavens came into contact with the short and fat old man's head, a power that was comparable to the impact of an asteroid penetrated through his entire body mercilessly. If the scene was slowed down 10,000 times, one would be able to see that the old man's head was like a can that had been crushed. It was twisted, sunk in, shattered, and eventually turned into a pile of meat paste that was compressed into his chest by that violent power. Then his chest shattered, and his flesh and blood kept on pressing down explosively. The short and fat old man seemed to have instantly turned into a flattened lump of flesh and blood, pressed down onto the surface by an invisible power. Therefore, the surface of the ground started to shatter. It was as if the ground was being torn apart and pierced through by waves of invisible power. A huge black hole kept on expanding with the short and fat old man's body as the corpse. Countless rocks and sand soared into the sky, and the atmosphere was compressed into colorful plasma shock waves that spread out in all directions. Everything happened within this 0.001 second. By the time the other 2 old men and Prince Exan reacted, their vision had already been encompassed by endless light and heat. 2 auras burst out from the 2 old men at the same time, and the aura of the Heavenly Dipper realm experts instantly connected into one, protecting the 3 people and withstanding the oncoming plasma shockwave, as well as countless gravel and sand that were like bullets bouncing over. It was only after an entire minute that the shock waves and tremors slowly dissipated. Looking at the smoke and dust that filled up the sky, the thin old man swung his right hand, and an invisible air current extended out, blowing away all the smoke and dust. The area within a range of several thousand meters had turned into barren land, and a huge crater had appeared before them. Even though the prince had used his spatial translocation power to negate 99% of the impact at the last moment, this attack of his had still caused a terrifying amount of damage. Right now, she had changed into a set of lightweight black training clothes, revealing her arms and calves. She stood barefooted on the ground as she rubbed her small, delicate fists. She exhaled a mouthful of white air. The pleasure of having her fists land on flesh had finally allowed her to vent her frustrations. As for the short and fat old man who had been struck by her, his body and spirit had been destroyed. The other three people looked at the prince as if they were facing a great enemy. The thin old man said in surprise and bewilderment, "Marie, why are you here? Where's Junior Marshal Brother Shao?" He was not the only one. Everyone was stunned by the scene before their eyes and the crown prince's earth-shattering attack. It was because they realized that if they had been the target of that attack earlier, none of them would have been able to survive. The enemy was far stronger than they had imagined. Chapter 10:37. That trash. He's escaped. Prince raised his eyelids, clenched his fists nonchalantly, and said, "The 3 mountains, 4 peaks, right? Don't worry. I'll look for them one by one. Run." Regardless of whether it was Prince's performance in instantly killing his companion or the fact that he had appeared here while Xiao Shan was nowhere to be found, all of these indicated one thing. The other party's strength far surpassed their estimations. Even though these 2 old men were top-notch experts from the 3 mountains, 4 peaks and were Tiangang realm characters, they did not have the slightest confidence that they would be able to win. Almost at the instant Prince appeared, they had already made this judgment. Therefore, with an explosive bellow, the thin old man's entire body surged with gang cheese, gushing out toward Prince with an overwhelming force. On the other side, the bald old man grabbed Prince Xian and shot out at lightning speed, fleeing. There was no need for communication or hints. Almost at the instant they took action, the 2 of them had already divided up the work. One was to delay, and the other was to flee. This was the tacit understanding and experience they had nurtured through countless battles to the death over several decades. As the thin old man slapped out with his palm, gang cheese gushed out violently, pressing out toward Prince like a tsunami. There seemed to be faint sounds of waves ringing out in the world. This move, toppling mountains and overturning seas, was created by observing the sun and moon, the tides, and great seas and tsunamis. It used gang cheese to imitate the seas, and when the palm slapped out, layers of gang cheese would stack up and the power would explode continuously, having the prowess to overturn rivers and seas. The thin old man had once crushed an entire county into dust with a single palm strike. The power of his palm was very powerful and was rarely seen in the world. Moreover, as the gang cheese increased, the prowess of this move kept on rising. It was almost limitless. Right now, it had been 20 years since the thin old man performed this move, and its prowess was limitless. However, when faced with the gang cheese sea that could crush a city and penetrate an army of several 10,000 people, Prince struck out a punch head-on. With an explosive rumble, white air currents gushed out with Prince's fist as the center. Violent physical strength smashed onto the gang cheese sea without any reservations. Then, under the astonished gaze of the thin old man, the earth-shattering aura came to an abrupt halt, as if a large truck had crashed into an aircraft carrier at full speed. The pause only lasted for a split second. In the next instant, the ocean of stellar energy suddenly surged back, as if the ocean had been struck by the punch, and it surged back toward the thin old man. Prince Xian, who was being dragged away at rapid speed, watched as the thin old man was drowned by endless air currents, and his body disappeared completely. Then, under his horrified gaze, that graceful figure was like a bolt of lightning. She took a step forward, and the ground beneath her feet split apart. Countless rocks rushed out of the ground. Prince had already arrived before Prince Xian, and his fist smashed into the bald old man's chest. Even his screams were stuffed back into his mouth by the wind pressure from the fist. In the next moment, the bald old man exploded into a bloody froth that filled the air. Prince Xian was sent flying at extreme speed. After being splattered all over with blood, he rolled onto the ground, smashing through a few buildings, and then fell into a stretch of ruins. As for the blood that had splattered toward Prince, it was sent flying by the strong wind before it could even get close. The crown princess rubbed her wrist. After consecutively killing three Mountains, 4 Peaks experts, she immediately felt much better. Although she could use the royal heavenly great palm imprint to slap them to death, it was still more satisfying to kill them with a punch and a kick. Crashing sounds rang out, and Prince Xian pushed away the debris on his body. He saw that the crown princess had already walked up to him, one step at a time. The shouts of countless soldiers and horses rang out in the distance, as well as the sounds of soldiers running. The 250,000-man army in the city had long since woken up, and countless people were running toward them. However, even though their numbers far surpassed the other parties, Prince Xian did not feel any sense of security, even though the over 200,000-man army was not far away from him. It was all because of this young lady who was like a ghost. At the thought of how she had killed 3 Tiangang realm experts within a few breaths' time, Prince Xian felt an extreme sense of terror. The feeling that his life was not in his hands caused his countenance to turn extremely grim. With a sound, Prince ignored Prince Xian's reaction and had no interest in seeing him beg for mercy, resist, or curse. Prince had already tapped Prince Xian's head with a finger. She then looked toward the 250,000-man army in the city that was gradually seething. The corners of Prince's lips curled up into a hint of a savage smile. At the next moment, she was like a cannonball, heading toward the center of the crowd. Boom! The news of the decisive battle in Qing City spread throughout the world like a typhoon. After this battle, Prince's reputation soared like the sun in the sky. Everyone knew that the imperial court had an unrivaled female general. With the recapture of the Jing region and Serene region, the Beiyuan region was without a leader, and the imperial court was about to take over the 3 regions. Clearly, they would once again reach the pinnacle very soon. With Prince's existence, the imperial court had clearly become the strongest influence in the world. No one had expected that the great Jin dynasty, which had been extremely weak earlier on, would once again show signs of resurgence. Unknowingly, all the influences in the world stopped what they were doing. Although the 3 regions in the south were under the control of Prince Ding, Prince An, and Prince Yi, they had stopped their restless actions. They kept sending envoys to each other, showing signs of joining forces. In the 6 regions of the Central Plains, the 18 feudal vassals who had been fighting against each other had unknowingly stopped and turned their gazes in the direction of the divine capital. There were many rebel armies in the coastal Min region. However, during the period when the imperial court was subduing Serene region, they were completely unified by the world's #1 rebel, Liang Bo. He had an army of 500,000 men under him and called himself the Red Scarf Army, facing off against the 18 feudal vassals in the Central Plains across the river. Although Liang Bo claimed to have an army of 500,000 men under him, compared to the elites under Prince Xian who had been fighting in the plains all year round, their quality was much lower. Their abilities were also not uniform, and there were even many soldiers who had yet to reach the Xiantian realm. They merely picked up a saber and entered the battlefield. However, regardless of whether it was the 3 princes in the south, the 18 feudal vassals in the Central Plains, or the leader of the uprising in Min region, none of them dared to act recklessly. They could only recuperate and accumulate their strength. Some people saw that the great Jin dynasty was rising up once again and wanted to wait for the imperial court's enlistment, wanting to join the imperial court once again. However, some people knew that they would be sentenced to death and wanted to rise up and attack, completely crushing the Fang clan's imperial court. However, no one was interested in taking the lead. It was because the imperial court was still in the hands of the righteous cause, and the imperial court was still very strong. Everyone lay low, quietly, waiting for an opportunity. In the imperial capital, Feng Xingjian rubbed his forehead, looked at the prince, and asked, "Is it over?" "The serene region has been completely subdued. Next, I plan to attack the Beiyuan region and take back Prince Xian's old nest." The prince lay on a wooden armchair, raising her long legs high up, wrapped in tightly fitting training pants. Her legs were placed on the tea table next to her. After saying what she planned to do next, she looked at Feng Xingjian and said, "All right, it's the appointed time. Let's change our martial arts." Feng Xingjian nodded, and a stream of sword intent shot out. It suddenly appeared between the prince's brows, coming and going without a trace. Even with the prince's realm, he was unable to sense how it had appeared. Instant sword. The prince absorbed the knowledge in this stream of sword intent, and his eyes revealed astonishment. To think that there's such a sword technique in the world. This sword technique's comprehension of time and space has reached the limits of Tier 6 of the divine level. Coming and going without a trace, coming and going without a trace. The prince threw a glance at Feng Xingjian, revealing a rare hint of admiration. "Your sword arts are really amazing." A hint of pride flashed in the prince's eyes. After a moment of hesitation, he still said, "But I won't take advantage of you." The prince spewed out a stream of golden light, which shot into Feng Xingjian's consciousness. There were countless golden scriptures densely packed together, amounting to several million words. Feng Xingjian instantly scanned through them and understood what this was. Son of Heaven's Qi Nurturing Technique? This is the Royal Heavenly Great Arts General Principles? His eyes narrowed slightly. He had not expected that the other party would give him such a good thing. If the Royal Heavenly Great Palm Imprint was said to be a way of consolidating one's foundation and defending against enemies in the Royal Heavenly Great Art, then this Son of Heaven's Qi Nurturing Technique was the core theory of the Royal Heavenly Great Art. It was one of the most essential parts. "Not bad," the prince said proudly. "This Son of Heaven's Qi Nurturing Technique is our Ascendant Heavenly Sex Supreme Technique, the Royal Heavenly Great Art's basic foundation. Returning your instant sword, you definitely won't lose out." It was true that he wouldn't lose out. At this moment, Feng Xingjian understood that his decision was not wrong. During this period of interaction, Feng Xingjian also understood some parts of the prince's character. The other party was as proud as he had imagined. This was why he had given him the instant sword directly. Moreover, the other party was also, as he had expected, not willing to take advantage of him. Therefore, he had given him the essence of the Son of Heaven's Qi Nurturing Technique. Chapter 1038. Several million words of scripture flowed rapidly in Feng Xingjian's mind. At this moment, not only did Feng Xingjian possess a brain that was comparable to that of a supercomputer, but he had also relied on the seal of wisdom to control the rich computing power of two regions. With such a powerful calculation ability, he was able to read through the entire Son of Heaven's Qi fostering technique in an instant. After looking through this Ascendant Heavenly Sex great martial art, Feng Xingjian also gasped in admiration at its profoundness. The Son of Heaven's Qi Nurturing Technique was not purely a cultivation technique or martial arts move. Instead, it gathered the essence of the Ascendant Heavenly Sex cultivation thoughts. It was the comprehension of countless experts toward martial arts and the world. The will of the people was the will of the heavens, and the will of the people was the will of the heavens. This was the core idea of the Son of Heaven's Qi Nurturing Technique. The content was split into three parts: heaven, earth, and human. It described the effects of heaven, earth, and human on the world, the universe beyond the heavens, the earth beneath their feet, and how all living beings change the world, change the entire timeline, and change the trend of the future. The history of the world was a collection of countless changes and trends. Those who could control more resources will be able to change more of the future. Only when heaven, earth, and man worked together could they change the direction of the timeline and change the entire future. The sky was the rotation of the universe. The earth was the changes of the stars under one's feet, and the people were the thoughts and thoughts of everyone in the world. The ascendant heavenly sect's most important goal was to unify the three and become the sole ruler of the entire timeline, using their own will to change the past, present, and future. Of course, this absolute art was very ambitious, but even the creator couldn't reach that final step. But even so, it was already very impressive. The various theories, cultivation techniques, and the use of the universe, the earth, the stars, and the will of the people were all things Feng Xingjian had never seen before. Therefore, this cultivation method did not have a fixed cultivation method. Everyone who saw the contents could come up with a completely different cultivation method. First of all, I have to grasp the will of the people. Feng Xingjian slowly deduced the cultivation method of the Son of Heaven's Qi fostering technique. According to the records of the Son of Heaven's Qi nurturing technique, the most convenient position to grasp the will of the people was to be the emperor. Everyone's way of thinking, everyone's goals, everyone's code of conduct, they converge together to form the direction of the entire society's development. But in this process, it was clear that not everyone's thoughts were the same. According to the difference in status and power, the more resources an individual possessed, the more influence his thoughts would have on the development of society. It was just like how an ordinary farmer could only decide on a small matter like farming, while an emperor could shake the world with a single order or even cause millions of corpses. This was what it meant to say. Those who had more resources would be able to control more people's thoughts and the trajectory of their destinies. As a character at the pinnacle of authority, the emperor gathered the wills and destinies of countless people in the world. This formless and intangible power that was almost undetectable, yet able to affect all living things, was known as Dragon Qi by the Ascendant Heavenly Sect. Dragon Qi was invisible and formless, and even divine-level experts would find it hard to detect it. However, it was omnipresent, and even ordinary people would be able to sense it. For example, a single order from the emperor, a single imperial edict, a single glance could change the entire situation of the world, make experts commit suicide, make armies retreat. Everyone could feel the pressure, and unknowingly, they would be affected by it. It was just like the current situation in the Central Plains. The reason why many powers did not dare to act rashly was partly because of the imperial court's strength, and partly because the imperial court occupied the position of righteousness and the identity of the emperor. Otherwise, the feudal vassals would probably besiege the divine capital. Therefore, although Dragon Qi was invisible and formless, it truly existed. It was an amalgamation of authority, status, the will of the people, and heaven's will. However, most emperors were unable to make use of this power and could only use it through indirect means such as authority, army, policies, and language. The Son of Heaven's Qi nurturing art required one to refine Dragon Qi and strengthen their intrinsic qualities, allowing the hearts of the people in the world to be in their hands and refined into a part of their martial will. With that, each attack would be able to gather the will of all living beings in the world, and even the power of the world circulation. However, if one wanted to gather Dragon Qi at the beginning, they would still need to use ordinary means to make the world submit to them. This was not difficult for Feng Xingjian. In order to make the people submit to him, it was nothing more than to improve everyone's quality of life. To Feng Xingjian, who came from a modern society and had great martial prowess, this was too easy. I've gained something from the demon's sect and need to continue. However, the imperial court needs to manage things here and gather Dragon Qi to cultivate the Son of Heaven's Qi nurturing art. There's no way for us to provide assistance over there. Therefore, the prince was sent to reclaim the lost land in the Beiyuan region, while Feng Xingjian started to truly govern this country. From this day onward, countless aristocrats in the divine capital discovered that the land under their feet had started to undergo all sorts of unbelievable changes. In fact, due to the development of martial arts in Middle-earth, there was no lack of productivity. After all, Xiantian realm experts were equivalent to first transition knights. Disha realm experts were equivalent to second transition knights, and Tiangang realm experts possessed the abilities of tier 1 of the divine level or above. Moreover, Due to the existence of the circulation system of the Tiangang realm and Disha realm, the difficulty of cultivating essential qi was much lower than that of knights. This caused their numbers to be over 10 times or even 100 times more than the extraordinary humans in Miracle World. Therefore, the scale of the cities in this world, the quality of the buildings, and their resistance against natural disasters far surpassed the standards that a feudal dynasty should have. However, it was also because their productivity came from martial arts that cultivators were more concerned with the increase in their cultivation and wealth instead of using their martial prowess for production. That was something that commoners needed to do. However, Fang Xingjian could use his absolute power to change this. Therefore, the army became a production team, and several 10,000 Xintian realm and over 100 Disha realm experts became glorious laborers. Each of them was like a human-shaped excavator, carrying out social construction under Fang Xingjian's command. Moreover, Fang Xingjian himself was a monster that had gathered the knowledge and productivity of the entire earth. Very soon, many roads started to appear in the Jing region and the Serene region, and several thousand cars would be sent out from the palace every day. However, this was just the beginning. As Fang Xingjian's time in this world was limited, he chose an even more radical method. He released his virtual image. Invisible and formless, the high-dimensional sword realm that no one could detect encompassed the Jing region and the Serene region, splitting mountains and seas, creating rivers and building roads. Everything was up to Fang Xingjian with a single thought. Waves of formless energy descended like the might of the heavens and earth. The mountain rocks were disintegrated, the river channels were changed, and the ground became flat. Layer after layer of paving materials were teleported over. It was as if an invisible giant hand had covered the ground. Everything happened so naturally, as if the world was revolving around Fang Xingjian's will. Chapter 1039. Within a few days, the basic transportation infrastructure had been completed across the two regions. Just this alone could greatly accelerate the circulation of goods, lower the cost of goods, and improve the quality of life of countless people. Logically speaking, the next step should be education, commerce, health. The voices of countless people rang out in Fang Xingjian's mind. He looked at the Jing region and the Serene region that were emitting countless lights in his consciousness, and there seemed to be countless numbers flashing in his eyes. Fang Xingjian could rapidly build the facilities in terms of hardware. However, he was unable to change people's thoughts at a rapid speed. Therefore, he still decided to keep on modifying the basic facilities to increase the people's happiness. He wanted to make the people feel what they wanted and to strengthen his dragon qi. Therefore, I'll first build the sewage system and electricity system. Even Fang Xingjian frowned at the thought of completing the construction of the water and electricity systems in the two regions. I'll take it slow. Just as the Serene region and the Jing region were going through tremendous changes, a storm was raging outside Middle-earth. In the west, in an oasis, flames soared into the sky. Women's cries and men's bellows formed a cruel scene. Heavenly Iksha and White Azura stood side by side, looking at the massacre in the tribe. The corners of their lips curled up into a cold smile. Heavenly Iksha, who had recovered from his hunchback, chuckled. He was like an owl in the deep mountains, giving off a feeling of trepidation. He said, "Jean Tiendi, are you going to watch your tribesmen die one by one?" Before the two of them was a man covered in blood. His body was tied up by many steel rods as he knelt on the ground. He looked at the calamity before him, and tears of blood flowed down from his eyes. Blood River Path. Even if I die, I won't hand over the legacy of the Demon Emperor. You won't shed a tear until you see your coffin. White Azura shook his head and said, "Bring the person over." A few disciples from the Blood River Path quickly escorted over 10 men and women over. Some of them wore thin muslin, while others wore long white robes. They were the typical attire of the Western region's tribes. However, from their appearances, they seemed to be mixed blood people from Middle-earth and the Western region. In reality, all of them were the relatives and disciples of the man kneeling before them. They belonged to the desolate Era Path, one of the 7 paths of the demon sect. They had been living in the western region for over 100 years. Looking at his wife, children, and disciple, a trace of pain finally flashed in the big man's eyes. A young woman in a black gauze dress knelt on the ground and cried, "Master, her is only 7 years old. Please save him. Dad, I don't want to die. Master, save us." The corners of White Azura's lips curled up into a cold smile, and he slowly walked up to a little boy. His pale palms slowly stroked the boy's face, and he said calmly, "A 7-year-old child. Wouldn't it be a pity if he were to die now?" Under the caress of White Azura's palm, the little boy trembled all over, and tears kept on welling up in his eyes. It was clear that he was extremely afraid. Enough! Jean Tiendi glared at White Azura, but his will to fight was almost completely gone. "Let them off. I'll hand over the Demon Emperor's legacy." Jean Tiendi's body trembled slightly, and a piece of flesh in front of his chest suddenly burst open, revealing his beating heart. Above his heart, a metal plate kept on beating along with his heart. It was the Demon Emperor's legacy, which had been passed down from generation to generation by the Desolate Era path. "To think that you hid it here?" White Azura looked at the Demon Emperor's legacy, and a hint of joy appeared on his face. "It's still not enough," Heavenly Yiksha said coldly. "Eat this." As gang cheese circulated, a green-colored medicinal pill with a foul smell was brought before Jean Tiendi. Now that he had lost his legacy and his entire clan had been captured, Jean Tiendi was already disheartened. When he saw the medicinal pill before him, he ate it without saying a single word. However, even though he did not ask, Heavenly Yiksha still had to explain. "This is the heart-devouring, brain-engulfing pill developed by the myriad poison path. After taking it, goo bugs will hide in your brain. If you don't take the antidote on the 15th of every month, you'll suffer the pain of having your brain slowly devoured by the goo bugs. Don't try to use gang cheese to attack them. Before they die, they'll crush your brain." Just as Heavenly Yiksha was explaining, White Azura giggled and stuffed another heart-devouring, brain-engulfing pill into the young boy's mouth. At the sight of this scene, Jean Tiendi's eyes almost popped out of his eye sockets. Gang cheese seethed all over his body, and with a furious bellow, he charged out toward White Azura. However, he had just stood up when Heavenly Yiksha pressed down on his head, sending him crashing fiercely toward the yellow sand under his feet. Amidst an explosive boom, air currents rose and sand soared up into the sky. Jean Tiendi was smashed into the yellow sand, and he was completely suppressed by Heavenly Yiksha. This Desolate Era path's strongest expert, a Tiangang realm expert, was currently unable to put up any resistance before Heavenly Yiksha. One reason for this was because he had suffered serious injuries. The other reason was that Heavenly Yiksha had been strengthened by Blood Sea through the vital energy and blood of several hundred White Bone Paths elites. He could be said to have been reborn, and his martial arts had already reached perfection. Tiangang realm experts who were slightly weaker were no match for him at all. White Azura broke into a satisfied smile as he watched the young boy consume the pill in his hand. "Jean Tiendi, I know what you're planning. However, if you harbor any other thoughts, you won't be the only one who'll die. Your son will also die from the pain of having his brain devoured by the bugs." The two of them, who had obtained the legacy of the Demon Emperor, no longer had any reservations. They started to squeeze out whatever value they had from each other. After getting someone to bring Jean Tiendi's family away, White Azura's smile grew increasingly brilliant. "All right, the Desolate Era path has surrendered. 6 of our sacred sect's 7 paths have gathered, and only the illusory emotions path is left. It's a pity." Heavenly Yiksha let out a sigh. If we had sought out the myriad poison path first, the iron blood path wouldn't have died out in vain. The two of them had been under Bloodsea's orders to attack the demon sect's 7 paths and snatch the legacy of the Demon Emperor. However, when they found their second target, the myriad poison path, they discovered that the other party had developed a miraculous poison called the heart-devouring, brain-swallowing pill. This poison was separated into a mother pill and a child pill. After consuming the child pill, the person would need to consume the antidote every month in order to continue living. However, this was only the basic function. The person who had consumed the child pill would be subtly influenced by the goo bugs in their brains. They would develop an increasingly stronger sense of closeness toward the person who had consumed the mother pill. In the end, they would almost treat the other party as the most important master in their life. It could be said to be an unrivaled weapon used to control experts. However, it was very difficult to create. The myriad poison path had spent over 100 years of effort, but they had only managed to create 2 mother pills and 10 child pills. Another reason was that the smell was too strong. That stench was something that could not be concealed no matter what method was used. Therefore, it was impossible to use it as a poison. They could only defeat their opponents and then force them to consume it. Previously, they had been worried that the other party would rather die than submit. Therefore, they had forced the other party to hand over the Demon Emperor's legacy before feeding them the medicine. It was a pity that before they encountered the myriad poison path, they had already wiped out the iron blood path. Despite this, they had successively subdued the myriad poison path, sinister ghost path, and the desolate era path. In addition to the already wiped out white bone path, iron blood path, and their own blood river path, as well as the remaining illusory emotions path, there were now 7 paths in the demon sect. There's nothing to feel pity about. With the 2 of us and the 3 people from the myriad poison path, sinister ghost path, and desolate era path, we have a total of 5 Tian Gang realm experts. It's impossible for the illusory emotions path to fend them off. White Azura smiled. Next, we'll just have to fight our way up to the Serene Mountain. Chapter 1040. On a cliff that was over 50 leagues away from the Serene Mountain, Fei Li, who was dressed in emerald green clothes, looked at the man in blood-red clothes before her with admiration. This man was the Blood River Path's leader, the heaven-blessed cultivator who had unified the demon sect's 6 paths, Blood Sea. Fei Li looked at this man who was like a god and felt that after coming out of seclusion this time around, his aura had become increasingly unfathomable. It was like the strong gales that were high up in the heavens, giving off a distant feeling as if they would never be able to come into contact with him. Right now, Blood Sea was standing on the cliff. His eyes had turned into a series of crimson vortexes, emitting blood-red glow incessantly, like crimson rubies. He looked at the serene mountain that was like a black dragon prostrating on the ground in the distance, and there seemed to be a hint of anticipation in his eyes. Behind the 2 of them were rows of Blood River Path's disciples. They were half kneeling on the ground, looking at the figure at the very front. There was only admiration in their eyes. After 300 years of separation, the sacred sect's 7 great orthodoxies were finally going to be unified once again in the hands of this man. At the thought of how they would be able to accomplish this world-shaking feat, their eyes were filled with uncontrollable agitation. Their gazes toward Blood Sea were also filled with even more admiration. Just then, an elder came to Blood Sea's side and said softly, "Lord Azura has sent the latest news. The Desolate Era path has ended. Based on the time, they'll probably be arriving at the agreed location soon." "All right." Blood Sea nodded, and his tone was a little indifferent. It was as if the Desolate Era path submission was unable to excite him. Fei Li asked puzzledly, "Lord, do we really need to wait for Heavenly Yiksha and the others to come? With your strength. After all, Zhao is the strongest expert in our sacred sect's 7 paths over the past 20 years. Blood Sea's eyes seethed with hints of blood-colored ripples. I'll naturally have to go all out to deal with her. This is also a form of respect for experts. I only hope that she won't disappoint me." At the next moment, he looked at the young lady and asked, "Fei Li, how's the situation in the Central Plains recently?" Right now, the world was in chaos. Blood Sea wanted to unify the demon sect so that he could make use of the demon sect's power to intervene in this chaotic situation. He even wanted to unify the Central Plains and advance to that supreme position. Fei Li gave it some thought and said, Ever since the imperial court defeated Prince Exian, they headed north to reclaim their lost lands. The other 18 feudal vassals, the 3 princes in the south, and that traitor Liang Bo are all quietly lying in wait. The smaller groups of rebels don't have the strength to influence the overall situation. Everyone is accumulating their strength, so nothing major has happened. Haha, I didn't expect the imperial court to be able to retaliate in such a situation. The corners of Bloodsea's lips curled up into a hint of a smile. After I unify the sacred sect, I'll have to take a good look at that legendary female general. Bloodsea was also very interested in this female general who was said to be as beautiful as a fairy, had defeated Prince Exian, and was even said to have defeated the Tiangang realm experts from the 3 Mountains 4 Peaks. However, Fei Li revealed a hint of hesitation. Bloodsea seemed to sense her hesitation and said, "Is there anything else? Just say it." Fei Li said with an uncertain tone, "It said that the great Jin dynasty's young emperor has started a reform, putting in great efforts to build roads, open up mountains, dig rivers, and build bridges. He also keeps on opening up trade routes, developing craftsmen, and setting up academies. He even got the many experts from the Forbidden Army to use their martial arts to carry out construction. I don't know if this is true or not." Hearing Fei Li's words, the corners of Bloodsea's lips curled up, revealing a hint of a sneer. "Fool! Rome wasn't built in a single day. The great Jin dynasty is already riddled with holes at its current state and can't withstand any more setbacks. If it's me, I'll grant amnesty to the world and recruit all the volunteer armies to surrender, recuperate, and accumulate strength silently. It's true that what he's doing is a good thing, but the timing is wrong. Does he think that he'll be able to sit firmly on the throne with just one great victory? His actions have probably depleted the last bit of the imperial court's vitality. He's really trying to cut himself off from the world. Moreover, soldiers are the foundation of a country. The stronger the cultivator, the more they need to cultivate and maintain their health over a long period of time." Shaking his head, Bloodsea continued. He even mobilized martial arts experts to carry out construction. He's really neglecting the essentials and focusing on trifles. He's digging his own grave for the sake of some insignificant benefits. To think that I treated him as an opponent previously. By the looks of it, he's still young and impetuous, someone with great ambitions but little talent. He then looked toward the serene mountain in the distance, and there seemed to be blood-colored flames burning in his eyes. "Wait until I completely unify the sacred sect." Zhao Yingluan sat cross-legged on the serene mountain. Streams of Tiangang cheese and Dishik cheese swam around her, forming many mysterious rings that emitted a strange suction force. Fu Daoxian, who was at the side, looked at it for a few more seconds and felt as if the essential qi in his body was leaving his body. She immediately lowered her head and asked puzzledly, "Master, are these the martial arts that His Majesty taught you?" Zhao Yingluan nodded, and her eyes gleamed with joy. To think that after His Majesty read through our illusory emotions Path's martial arts secret manuals, he was able to gain a comprehensive understanding of them so quickly and even made improvements to them. He's really a rare talent in martial arts. During this period of time, she had only received a little guidance from Feng Xingjian. With Feng Xingjian's ability to see through the essence and see through the microscopic realm, her martial arts cultivation had improved tremendously. Her illusory demonic rotation martial arts had also reached a realm where it was formless and unseen, responding to nature. Each portion of her power could unleash 100% of its effects. Her ability to borrow force to fight back had also gone through an overwhelming qualitative change. "Master," Fu Daoxian asked curiously, "do you think that His Majesty might be the rumored heaven-blessed cultivator?" "Heaven-blessed cultivator?" Zhao Yingluan hesitated for a moment. The legendary heaven-blessed cultivators were all cultivators with extraordinary aptitude. It was not just a matter of their aptitude. It was also said that their martial arts were bestowed by the heavens. Even without anyone's guidance, they would be able to pick up countless amazing techniques. That's possible. Zhao Yinglan also had some doubts. After all, with Fang Xian's age, it seemed that he could only be a heaven-blessed cultivator for him to have reached this realm. She looked in the direction of the mountain's peak, and a hint of awe flashed in her eyes. Fang Xian seemed to have gained some comprehension toward the Demon Emperor's legacy. 3 days ago, he had announced that he would be going into seclusion, forbidding anyone from getting close to the mountain's peak. "All right, don't talk about His Majesty behind his back," Zhao Yinglan said, patting Fu Daoxian's head. "Come, Xian Ber, spar with Master. I'll pass on His Majesty's improvements to you. In the future, the imperial court will be in need of manpower. Whether or not you can stand out will depend on yourself." This disciple obeys. Fu Daoxian nodded. At the next moment, he circulated his martial arts and flew out lightly. His long sleeves drifted toward Fang Xian like flowing clouds. Chapter 1041. On the other side, before Fang Xingjian, the fragment that was neither gold nor silver spun, emitting a mysterious dim light. There seemed to be countless words floating out, disappearing into the surrounding void. During this period of time, Fang Xingjian had made use of his understanding of the demon sect's martial arts, the records of the demon sect's history, the royal family's manuals as a reference, as well as the memories of countless commoners gathered in the two regions. Fang Xingjian finally managed to slowly decipher a portion of the profoundness of the Demon Emperor's legacy. Rather than saying that the Demon Emperor's legacy was a martial art, it would be better to say that it was a password. The Great Tao's testimony. This is the true name of the Demon Emperor's legacy. Fang Xingjian's thoughts were extremely clear. From the Disha realm onward, the cultivators in this world will be slowly assimilated by the Disha Qis. After reaching the Tiangang realm, they will be transformed by the Tiangang Qis and Disha Qis. What they obtain isn't true power, but the authority to control the world's powers. Fang Xingjian grabbed out casually and grabbed the Tiangang Qis and Disha Qis. Clearly, the Tiangang Qis and Disha Qis in this world are all alive. The cultivator's cultivation is to control them step by step, and through this process, they will keep on strengthening themselves. In the end, after they die, they will return to the world and return to the cycle of the Tiangang Qis and Disha Qis. And the Great Tao's testimony. Fang Xingjian sensed the information contained in the fragment. It seemed to be a path that led straight to the heavens. This is the crux to stepping into the Great Tao realm. It doesn't matter if it's recorded in the fragment or in some other medium. The crux is the information contained in it. Before the Demon Emperor died, he passed down the authority he grasped, hoping that his descendants would be able to grasp it. It's a pity that not everyone has the aptitude. Fang Xingjian stroked his chin. Or rather, ordinary people won't be able to grasp it at all. To be able to grasp the Great Tao's testimony seems to require some kind of special ability. Right now, Fang Xingjian could be said to have discovered the lock on the door. However, he was unable to find the location of the key. But if that's the case, where did the Great Tao's testimony come from? Fang Xingjian sensed the information from the Great Tao's testimony, but every time he tried to summon it and use its authority, he would be rejected. It was as if he had entered the password over and over again, but all of them were wrong. Since it doesn't work, I'll just have to use brute force. Fang Xingjian's eyes narrowed slightly, and there seemed to be streams of sword light flashing in them. At the next moment, the power of the high-dimensional sword realm entered the three-dimensional world and slashed at the source of its essence, following the guidance of the Great Tao's testimony. It was as if he didn't need to enter the password and directly attack the other party's server. At the next moment, a massive human figure that seemed to be able to penetrate through the heavens and earth appeared in Fang Xingjian's senses. Even a hint of astonishment appeared on his face. The surroundings where Fang Xingjian was cultivating in seclusion were all blocked off by layers of guards set up by the illusory emotions path to prevent anyone from disturbing his seclusion. But at this moment, at the foot of the secluded mountain, there was a series of screams and shouts. Many of the guards were secretly shocked when they heard it. What's going on? Is someone fighting their way up? Who's attacking the secluded mountain? Swoosh, 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 swoosh sounds rang out consecutively in the middle of the mountain. Streams of crimson thin threads flashed past, and in that instant, a series of agonizing cries rang out. Several tens of the illusory emotions past disciples were slashed into minced meat. The red thin threads were white Azura's many strands of hair. The crimson demonic vengeance art he cultivated used the Tiangang cheese and Disha cheese to temper his hair like how one would temper a magical treasure. After reaching the Tiangang realm, each strand of hair was like the legendary flying swords. They could slice through gold and jade with ease, and they could even break through chi fields. They were the best at restraining armies that were connected by chi fields. White Azura walked toward the top of the secluded mountain, and no one could make him stop in his tracks. White Azura was not the only one. Heavenly Yiksha also made a move. The muscles all over his body made explosive sounds, and his thick joints looked like steel bars. He charged forward like a tank charging through an infantry formation, killing his way up the secluded mountain as if there was no one there. With the two Tiangang realm experts as the vanguard, the remaining disciples from the Blood River Path, Desolate Era Path, Sinister Ghost Path, and Myriad Poison Path swarmed forward. Within a short period of time, the illusory emotions Path's disciples were defeated. Just then, a faint phantom image plunged down from the mountain like a bolt of lightning, landing right before White Azura. Zhao Englan, White Azura, you're courting death. With an explosive crackle, piercing white light soared into the sky. The forest within a range of 100 meters was destroyed by the impact waves from the collision of their gang chis. A large half of the crimson-red strands of hair were broken by the intense gang chis, and White Azura retreated over 10 steps. Each step he took caused the ground to crack. What a great illusory emotions path sect master. Come and receive a punch from me. Seeing that White Azura was in a disadvantageous position, Heavenly Yiksha laughed out loud. The gang chis throughout his body exploded like an airship's engine, bringing along a gust of strong gales as he charged out toward Zhao Englan. However, even though the two of them joined forces and surrounded Zhao Englan, they were still pushed back repeatedly. They felt that Zhao Englan was currently like the eye of a huge typhoon. No matter what kind of attacks landed on her, they seemed to have no effect at all. Instead, they would be rebounded and hit their companions. It's the illusory emotions path's illusory demonic rotation. Be careful. Don't let her borrow your strength to attack you. Heavenly Yiksha let out an astonished cry. At the next moment, several tens of strands of White Azura's hair slashed onto his body, creating a myriad of sparks from the friction. White Azura let out a stifled snort and was sent flying by Heavenly Yiksha's fist force. It's useless. Zhao Englan was like a goddess amidst a tempest, floating amidst the endless gang chis. She said slowly, my illusory demonic rotation excels in group battles. It doesn't make a difference to me whether there's one or two of you. Seeing how Zhao Englan had the upper hand in the battle, many illusory emotions past disciples cheered. However, just then, another 3 figures charged out. They were a man in white robes, a priest in green robes, and a lady with eerie, ghostly auras. The 3 of them were the sect masters of the Desolate Era Path, Myriad Poison Path, and Sinister Ghost Path. Seeing the 3 of them appear together, Zhao Englan was also surprised. White Azura was struck by another punch and said furiously, "What are you guys waiting for? Attack together and take down this demonic woman." Hearing this, the 3 of them exchanged a helpless glance. At the next moment, their gang chis joined together and dashed out toward Zhao Englan. I'm sorry, Sect Master Zhao. With the 3 of them making their moves, strong gales immediately blew. Poison gas soared into the sky, and a myriad of ghostly shadows flew about. Although the powers of each of the 6 Tiangang realm experts' moves had been condensed to an extreme, their prowess was still world-shaking. They fought to the point where mountains and rivers were overturned, and large areas of the serene mountain collapsed. Countless Xiantian realm and Disha realm experts joined their chi fields together, barely managing to fend off the waves of repercussive waves. White Azuras and heavenly Yakshas' countenances were extremely grim. It was because the five of them had joined forces and were only barely able to suppress Zhao Yinglan. Chapter 1042. Bloodsea took a light step with the tip of his feet, and he flew up along the mountain path, as if he had lost the restrictions of gravity. His blood-colored long robes fluttered under the strong gales, as if he was covered in burning blood flames. Fei followed behind Bloodsea and looked at the battlefield in the distance. There would occasionally be astonishing air explosions erupting, large areas of mountain ranges collapsing, and sand soaring into the sky. She could not help but reveal a horrified expression in her eyes. Even though the world was in chaos and the flames of war were rising everywhere, this was the first time there was a battle between 6 Tiangang realm experts. Fei Li's heart swayed, almost unable to control herself. "Young master, are we really not going to care about them?" she could not help but ask. Bloodsea threw a glance at the battlefield in the distance, and the blood-colored vortexes in his eyes kept on spinning. It was as if he could see through the layers of explosive air currents and the splattering sand to see the situation in the center of the battlefield clearly. In his eyes, Zhao Yinglan's illusory demonic rotation had already been unleashed to an extreme. Every bit of essential chi and power was not wasted at all. All of them cleverly clashed together with heavenly Yiksha and the other four's chi fields, either reversing, deflecting, or trembling. The five of them's attacks were all neutralized, even allowing them to attack each other. The illusory emotions path's illusory demonic rotation is truly an unrivaled technique for group battles. Zhao Yinglan's true powers aren't that much stronger than the five of them, but she can still hold on under their joint attacks, Bloodsea said calmly. However, her illusory demonic rotation has yet to reach a perfect realm. Each time they exchange blows, she still needs to use her gang chis as a guide. She can't fully borrow the other party's powers, and her gang chis are depleted at an extremely fast rate. In the end, he came to a firm judgment. It's just a matter of time before she loses. Fei Li naturally believed in Bloodsea's judgment. Hearing that, she said joyfully, "Then from today onward, the sacred sect's 7 paths will be under young master's control. This is inevitable. No matter how the process changes, the outcome has long been decided." Bloodsea's gaze was indifferent, and the vortexes in his eyes spun increasingly faster. It was as if he had a panoramic view of the entire battlefield. However, when he saw the illusory emotions path's people's expressions and setup, he could not help but frown. Interesting. Right now, although Zhao Yinglan was at a disadvantage, be it the people from the illusory emotions path or Zhao Yinglan herself, there was no hint of panic on their faces. Bloodsea could even tell that none of the illusory emotions path's elders and disciples had the intention of stepping forward to help him. Instead, they seemed to be guarding the path leading to the top of the mountain, as if they were guarding something. There's definitely something amiss when there's an abnormality. I want to see what you guys are hiding. Bloodsea's eyes narrowed slightly. He turned into a stream of blood flames and dashed up the mountain. In the blink of an eye, a stream of blood flames had already charged out several thousand meters toward the top of the mountain along the mountain path. When the many illusory emotions path disciples saw this, they immediately bellowed furiously and charged forward. As the strongest faction among the demon sect's 7 paths in the past few decades, the illusory emotions path also had the most experts among the various sections. Even though they had been caught off guard in the beginning, and a batch of them had been killed by Heavenly Yiksha and White Azura, there were still over 1,000 Xintian realm experts set up on the Serene Mountains line of defense. There were also several tens of Disha realm cultivators on standby. Now that they were suddenly under attack, the essential chis of over 1,000 cultivators erupted simultaneously. The chi field connected together and pushed out toward Bloodsea with an overwhelming force. However, faced with the gushing chi field attack, Bloodsea turned a blind eye. The gang cheese behind him surged, and the sound of crashing waves rang out. A stretch of blood light soared into the sky, and in the blink of an eye, it turned into an endless sea of blood that clashed out toward the gang cheese. Rumble! The chi field and the sea of blood instantly clashed together. The chi field, which could tear apart city walls and destroy mountains, was unable to withstand a single blow from the seething sea of blood. It collapsed upon contact, and in the blink of an eye, it was suppressed by the sea of blood. The countenances of over 1,000 illusory emotions paths experts changed, and they spewed out a mouthful of blood. At the next moment, the overwhelming sea of blood came pressing down explosively. Although the many illusory emotions paths experts summoned their essential chis and kept on supporting the chi field to clash against the sea of blood time and time again, they were still pushed back repeatedly. In the blink of an eye, over 100 Xintian realm experts were drawn in by the sea of blood, melting into a pool of blood in the blink of an eye, completely merging into the sea of blood. The illusory emotions paths disciples were pushed back repeatedly, but Blood Sea did not care at all. He took one step at a time, like he was taking a leisurely stroll in the direction of the mountain's peak. With this move of his, the endless sea of blood also pressed down toward the illusory emotions path's line of defense with him at the center. Streams of viscous blood rivers were like extremely poisonous and sinister things in the world. Everything they came into contact with, be it cultivators, plants, or even the mountain itself, kept on melting, turning into a part of the sea of blood in the end. Seeing that the overwhelming sea of blood was about to engulf the entire mountain, the remaining illusory emotions path's disciples still did not back off. They went all out and activated their chi fields, delaying the rise of the sea of blood. Aren't they afraid of death? At the sight of this scene, Blood Sea's brows raised. You guys have successfully piqued my interest. At this moment, Blood Sea was really curious about what the people from the illusory emotions path were protecting. On the other side of the battlefield, Zhao Yinglan seemed to have sensed the seething blood waves that had suddenly appeared. Her chi waves seethed all over her body, and she darted out fiercely from the 5 people's encirclement. Gang chis gushed out, causing the atmosphere to tremble, and the sound she emitted was so loud that it could shake up a distance of 100 lis. Stop it! Blood Sea, do you want to die? However, she had just dashed out when Heavenly Yiksha and the other 4 caught up to her and suppressed her once again. Zhao Yinglan, you'd better be more concerned about yourself. Put in more effort. Her aura is already unstable, and she doesn't have enough gang chis. However, Blood Sea smiled, and the corners of his lips curled up. The more Zhao Yinglan and the others from the illusory emotions path tried their best to stop him, the more curious he became about what was up there. Blood Sea took a step forward, and as the blood waves seethed around him, he flew out toward the mountain's peak like he was riding on a blood dragon. Fei Li, who was following behind him, was also swept up by the blood waves and followed closely behind him. In the blink of an eye, the 2 of them had already passed through many mountain paths and several hundred illusory emotions paths experts. Countless streams of chi fields smashed out toward the 2 of them, but they were all blocked by the blood waves. Some of them even bounced back, causing the chi fields to collapse repeatedly. Streams of air currents seethed out, and large areas of the mountain collapsed. Many disciples cried out agonizingly as they were swept into the mudslides. A soft pitter-patter rang out, and as the seething blood rivers flowed, Blood Sea and Fei Li landed before the door of the hall at the mountain's peak. Crimson light flashed in Blood Sea's eyes, and the 2 blood-colored vortexes spun increasingly rapidly. Chapter 1043. The blood-colored vortex in Blood Sea's eyes was the Blood River Path's supreme technique, the Netherworld Tribulation Eye. It could see through the profoundness of how all living things in the world operated and was an unrivaled martial arts remarkable ability. With this remarkable ability, the speed at which he comprehended martial arts was at least 10 times faster than before. His efficiency in subduing his enemies and finding their weaknesses as well as ways to counter the various sects and factions' martial arts was also astonishingly fast. At this moment, when he activated the Netherworld Tribulation Eye once again, he could immediately sense a man sitting cross-legged in the hall through the layers of metal walls. However, before he could continue checking out the other party's situation, a stream of chi field descended from the sky. The chi field turned into layers of millstones that were intertwined with opposing forces. Wherever it passed by, the friction in the atmosphere would produce streams of thunderbolts and flames. It was like a great millstone of the world, wanting to crush Blood Sea into minced meat. Faced with this attack that descended from the sky, Blood Sea raised his head and took a glance. Then he tapped out with a finger, and a stream of blood light pierced through the sky. It was like a laser cannon, shattering and dissipating the great millstone of the world that was formed by the chi field. Simultaneously, several tens of illusory emotions path disciples had already caught up, blocking the way in front of the hall. Fu Daoxian, who was in the lead, looked at Blood Sea with a grim countenance and bellowed fiercely, "Blood Sea, stop it. If you offend the important person in the hall, everyone from the Blood River path can forget about surviving." "Oh, important person?" Blood Sea smiled softly. "I'm curious. What kind of important person is there in this world who is so important that even I can't meet him?" With that, he pushed out his palm gently, and a pungent stench of blood soared into the air. Overwhelming blood waves engulfed the entire hall as he pushed out his palm. "Stop him." Fu Daoxian let out a soft bellow, and everyone's essential chis immediately gathered on her hand. The chi field swelled up, turning into waves of invisible rotating wheels that blocked Blood Sea's path. The sea of blood and the spinning wheel collided, and a series of deafening explosions rang out. The spinning wheel brought with it a twisting force, diverting most of the power of the sea of blood away. However, the power of the waves of blood was simply too strong. In just a few seconds, the force field completely collapsed. Fu Daoxian and the others cried out in shock and retreated into the palace. Fu Daoxian, as expected of the illusory emotions path's female, saint of this generation. To be able to withstand my palm attack for a single breath's time, it's something you can be proud of for your entire life. Blood Sea let out a long laugh and brought Fei Li along as he followed them in. Wherever he passed by, many metal walls would be broken through by the blood waves around him. In the blink of an eye, the entire hall was encompassed by layers and layers of blood rivers. The pungent smell of blood seemed as if it was going to materialize, making one feel like vomiting. In the hall, the illusory emotions path's disciples with Fu Daoxian in the lead were surrounding a man. That man was seated cross-legged with his eyes tightly shut. He seemed to be circulating his martial arts. It was Feng Xinjian, who was cultivating in seclusion and comprehending the great Tao's testimony. Looking at Feng Xinjian in the hall, Blood Sea let out a soft laugh. "You guys are protecting this man?" Fei Li frowned, seeming to have recognized Feng Xinjian's identity. She said in disbelief, "This is Feng Xian?" "Feng Xian?" A gleam flashed in Blood Sea's eyes. "That young emperor from the divine capital, Feng Xian?" Fei Li quickly nodded and said, "That's him. When I went to the divine capital 3 years ago, I saw him from afar on the streets. Although he has changed a little, this appearance is indeed him." "Ha ha ha ha. So that's how it is. To think that this young emperor has been abducted by the illusory emotions path to this place." Blood Sea laughed coldly. "The heavens are really on my side. He's mine now." As he spoke, the blood waves around him trembled slightly, instantly turning into many blood dragons that charged out toward Feng Xinjian. Seething powers circulated in the blood dragons' bodies, condensing dragon claws, dragon scales, dragon horns, and dragon whiskers. They appeared very lifelike, like a real dragon. Although Fu Daoxian and the others tried their best to resist, how could they possibly be a match for Blood Sea? The blood dragons reached out with their claws, and violent powers gushed forth. Streams of force shattered the chi field, and many illusory emotions path's disciples spewed out blood and died from the vibrations. As the air currents from the collision seethed out, the entire hall's roof was sent flying. The surrounding walls shattered abruptly, exposing the entire hall to sunlight. On the other hand, even though Fu Daoxian had received guidance from Zhao Yinglan and had gained a basic mastery of the illusory demonic rotation, he was still seriously injured by this attack. All the bones in his body were shattered, and his internal organs were ruptured. He was only left with a bit of essential qi to forcefully hang on to his life. However, the blood dragon seemed as if it had just crushed a few ants. It continued to fly toward Fang Xingjian without stopping, grabbing out fiercely toward his head with one of its dragon claws. However, just as the dragon claws were about to grab onto Fang Xingjian, it came to an abrupt stop and could no longer move at all. Fang Xingjian opened his eyes slowly. Right now, his eyes were filled with impatience. The Great Tao's testimony had given him too many surprises. Right now, all of his computational abilities, including the abundant computational abilities of two regions, were being used to derive the profoundness within it. He no longer paid any attention to anything else. In fact, if Bloodsea had not made a move against him, it would not matter to him even if everyone from the illusory emotions path died. Compared to what he was doing, these things were too insignificant. Right now, just the action of opening his eyes had caused the blood dragon before him to break down completely. The dragon's scales and claws shattered one by one, eventually exploding and turning into a pool of blood that fell onto the ground. Intentional. Bloodsea smiled. Not only did Fang Xingjian's performance not make him panic, but it also made him curious. However, before he could finish saying this, a palm pressed down on his face, covering his entire mouth. Trash. Bloodsea only felt as if his head was being squeezed by two continents. The gang cheese in his body burst out explosively, and streams of blood waves drowned out the entire mountain. The ground under his feet melted rapidly. However, no matter how he performed it, the big hand that was grabbing onto his face did not give in at all. On the contrary, the power that came from it became increasingly stronger, causing his bones to release kacha-kacha sounds as if they were going to break down at any moment. At the next moment, the endless sea of blood shattered, turning into a rain of blood that fell onto the ground. A human figure shot out from the top of the mountain like a crimson meteor. Along the way, the air exploded, pierced through the atmosphere, and smashed out streams of air currents and sonic booms. In the end, it collided onto the other side of the battlefield. Wherever it passed by, the ground would crack open and the mountains would collapse. Smoke and dust flew up, and countless rocks and soil splattered out. That human figure smashed out a crater that was several hundred meters wide in front of the battlefield where Heavenly Yiksha, White Azura, and the others were. It also caused the battle between the 6 Tiangang realm experts to come to a halt. The 5 of them joined forces and circulated their gang cheese, fending off the strong gales brought about by the impact. Heavenly Yiksha then waved his hand, dispersing all the smoke and dust. Under the 5 of them's astonished gazes, Bloodsea lay in the center of the crater like a broken cloth bag. Most of his body had turned into a pool of mud. However, the most terrifying thing was still his head, which had almost been clenched out of shape. The reason why it could be seen that his head had been clenched was because there was still an imprint of a hand clenching down on his face. The 5-finger imprints were extremely obvious, firmly imprinted on his face along with the broken and deformed bones and flesh that had been pressed together. Chapter 1044. As the sea of blood fell, the entire battlefield became silent in an instant. The 6 Tiangang realm experts, who had been engaged in a great battle earlier, all stopped and looked in Bloodsea's direction in great astonishment. This was especially so for Heavenly Yiksha and White Azura. The 2 of them understood very well how powerful Bloodsea was. Having been subdued by Bloodsea and given guidance in martial arts for so many years, they knew too much about how terrifying this heaven-blessed cultivator was. Therefore, even though their martial arts had improved tremendously, they still did not dare to have any thoughts of rebelling. However, to think that such an unfathomable expert had been tossed down like a dead dog. Who was his opponent? How powerful was he? At the thought of this, Heavenly Yiksha's forehead was covered in cold sweat. He turned and saw that White Azura was looking at him with a familiar gaze. That expression was one of terror. In the past, they had always seen this expression on other people's faces. Heavenly Yiksha could imagine that his current countenance was definitely not any better than White Azura's. Just then, a green shadow flashed by. Fei Li ran down from the mountaintop while screaming. She circulated her movement technique to the extreme, bringing along a series of afterimages as she chased after Blood Sea. Young Master, looking at Blood Sea, who was like a broken doll, her eyes turned red, and her hands kept on trembling. However, she did not know where to place them. Simultaneously, the endless smoke and dust were repelled by an invisible force. As an invisible pressure came gushing forth, a figure descended from the sky and slowly landed in the center of the battlefield. It was Feng Xingjian, who had been disturbed from his seclusion. At the sight of Feng Xingjian's appearance, Zhao Yingluan immediately dropped to one knee and said solemnly, "Your subject deserves to die for disturbing your majesty. Your majesty, please forgive me." Within a short moment, all the illusory emotions past disciples were half kneeling on the ground. Essential qis flowed continuously, turning into a stretch of qi field that shook the atmosphere. Zhao Yingluan and the other illusory emotions past disciples and elders were all convinced of Feng Xingjian's superiority through the exchanges and martial arts guidance during this period of time. They wanted to cling on to this super strong thigh with all their hearts. When Heavenly Yiksha and the others saw this scene, they wore astonished and bewildered expressions. Right now, Fei Li's eyes were filled with a chaotic gleam. She did not notice Zhao Yingluan's words or the illusory emotions path's actions. Right now, her brain was operating at 100% capacity. Therefore, all of her attention was focused on a single problem: how to let Blood Sea survive. Young Master is someone who can change the world. He is the last hope of the entire Saint Gate. No matter what, we must let him live. In order to achieve the goal in her heart, Fei Li's brain was working to its limits, and all her attention was focused on this one and only goal. No matter how her brain worked and how active her sea of consciousness was, there was only one solution she could think of at this moment. Her body tilted slightly, and she knelt on the ground with a bang. Then, she prostrated herself on the ground, trying her best to show her submission. "We surrender." Fei Li's voice trembled slightly as she said the only solution she could think of right now: "We surrender." When Fei Li said this, the minds of Heavenly Yiksha, White Azura, and the others went blank. They looked at this scene in a daze, as if they were unable to make the correct reaction. However, there was one person present who absolutely couldn't accept this outcome. "Shut up." Blood Sea's body trembled slightly, and his heavily injured body seemed to have recovered a little. He glared at Feng Xingjian and said, "Who asked you to surrender?" As he spoke, his body started to recover at a speed that could be seen by the naked eye. His crushed flesh was squeezed out by new, healthy flesh, turning into pools of blood that dropped onto the ground. Damn it, if it wasn't because I've attained a breakthrough in the Northern Dark Rebirth technique. Young Master. At the sight of this scene, Fei Li cried tears of joy. She immediately went up to help Blood Sea up. All sorts of energies in the world, especially Tiangang Qis and Disha Qis, gushed into Blood Sea's body incessantly. They rapidly healed his flesh and replenished his Gang Qis. At the sight of this scene, Feng Xingjian was slightly stunned. He then threw a glance toward Heavenly Yiksha and the others, and a hint of understanding flashed in his eyes. "You've unified the various demon sect paths and even absorbed the powers of the Great Tao's testimony?" Hearing Feng Xingjian's question, Blood Sea was slightly stunned and did not reply. However, his gaze toward Feng Xingjian was now even more guarded. It was already amazing for ordinary experts to know of the Demon Emperor's legacy. Other than the three mountains, four peaks, Shaoshan, Blood Sea had never encountered anyone else who knew of the great Tao's testimony. However, although Blood Sea did not reply, Fang Xingjian saw the changes in his countenance. Excellent. I was just fretting about not being able to find the key. I didn't expect that you'd send yourself to my doorstep. As he spoke, Fang Xingjian once again put out his claw. It was the exact same action and stance as before, grabbing out toward Blood Sea's face. Seeing Fang Xingjian's actions, a hint of intense humiliation flashed on Blood Sea's face. It was this move earlier that had caused him to suffer an unprecedented humiliation. This time around, Blood Sea did not fight it head-on. Instead, he instantly turned into countless afterimages. It was as if he had turned into over 100 people, scattering out and dodging in all directions. The speed of each of the silhouettes caused a series of sonic booms. The strong gales they stirred up gathered together and kept on stacking up, as if they were going to form a tempest. However, at the next moment, Fang Xingjian's palm had already appeared before his actual body without a sound. Blood Sea's countenance changed abruptly, and he cut across an impossible arc in midair. The surrounding gravitational forces seemed to change along with his movements, dodging Fang Xingjian's palm. However, in the blink of an eye, that palm had once again appeared before him. It was even a little closer. Blood Sea let out an enraged bellow, circulated his gang cheese, and his figure changed once again. Within a short few seconds, Blood Sea performed the illusory, demonic movement technique, wave-treading subtle steps, wind god's legs. Many extremely powerful movement techniques were performed by Blood Sea. He even brought about changes in the weather, causing gravity to become abnormal and space to distort. The many Tiangang realm cultivators in the surroundings felt refreshed, and their gazes were filled with astonishment. His speed was so fast, and the changes were so great, that only Tiangang realm cultivators could barely see through the profoundness. The remaining Disha and Xiantian realm experts could not even see Blood Sea's silhouette clearly. None of the 6 Tiangang realm experts who were watching the battle had expected that a person could learn so many unprecedented movement techniques. However, the more he kept on dodging, the more flustered Blood Sea's eyes became. It was because he discovered that no matter how he tried to dodge, Fang Xingjian's palm got increasingly closer. It was like an inescapable nightmare. Chapter 1045. Fang Xingjian's expression remained calm. He watched as Blood Sea stimulated his potential time and time again under his coercion. He watched as more and more of the world's powers, especially the Tiangang cheese and Disha cheese, were mobilized. Fang Xingjian gained a deeper understanding of the circulation of the great Tao's testimony. Simultaneously, he was even more certain that Blood Sea had absorbed the authority of the great Tao's testimony and possessed the ability to mobilize a tremendous amount of Tiangang cheese and Disha cheese. He could even make use of the circulation of a tremendous amount of Tiangang cheese and Disha cheese to perform all sorts of unbelievable martial arts. This meant that Blood Sea did not need to deplete any powers. With just a single thought, he could draw out and control a tremendous amount of Tiangang cheese and Disha cheese. He could also change the 4 fundamental forces and produce all sorts of extraordinary phenomena. He could even exert a great influence on the essential cheese and gang cheese in other Disha realm and Tiangang realm experts' bodies with a single thought. If it was said that Tiangang realm experts were equivalent to ordinary Tier 1 divine level experts, then Blood Sea, who possessed the great Tao's testimony, was equivalent to reaching Tier 5 of the divine level. However, it had not been long since Blood Sea obtained the great Tao's testimony and had yet to get used to this power. He was unable to unleash his full powers, and he had yet to truly attain a breakthrough to the Tiangang realm and reach the legendary Great Tao realm. It's about time. After understanding the changes, Fang Xingjian no longer held back. Sword intents flashed in void space, and at the next moment, 4 streams of blood exploded on Blood Sea's body. His four limbs were instantly slashed off. Ah! A furious bellow rang out. At this critical moment of life and death, Bloodsea only felt that his mind was clear, and his thoughts were unprecedentedly clear. It was just like how it had been for Xiaoshan earlier. At the most critical moment, his martial arts also showed signs of attaining a breakthrough. Everything in the surroundings seemed to have gradually slowed down, and everything seemed to be progressing toward an endless state of stillness. Just as Bloodsea was about to achieve the breakthrough that he had been dreaming of, an extremely powerful martial will swept out. It was like a strong gale sweeping up fallen leaves, sweeping through Bloodsea's consciousness. All of his thoughts and memories were blasted into pieces, and he temporarily lost consciousness. Grabbing Bloodsea's head with one hand, Fang Xingjian lifted him up high. Seeing that Bloodsea's severed limbs continued to recover despite losing consciousness, a satisfied smile flashed in Fang Xingjian's eyes. Ah! Right at this moment, Fei Li, who was behind him, had already charged forward. Her palms brought about a myriad of clear shadows that enveloped Fang Xingjian. But in the next moment, she felt a pain in her stomach, and her whole body was sent flying at an even faster speed. With a boom, she crashed into a mountain, and her whole body was smashed into the rock stratum hundreds of meters deep. He looked at his stomach in a daze. There was a big bloody hole there. A strong sense of unwillingness and regret flashed in her eyes. Moments later, as she died, her essential qi dissipated into the air. Countless streams of disha qis returned to the earth. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Who else wants to fight? After killing Fei Li with a single strike, Fang Xingjian's gaze swept across the entire area. Everyone felt a strong sense of threat, as though there was a cold light on their backs. On the other side, Heavenly Yiksha clenched his fists tightly for a moment. A hint of hesitation flashed across his eyes, but he relaxed in the end. He's too strong. He and we aren't existences of the same dimension. White Azura's head was lowered, and his eyes were narrowed slightly as he stared at his feet. It was as if there was some profoundness hidden there. I can't move. I can't move at all. It's the killing intent and the sword intent. It's like there's something pressing against my heart. I'll die if I move even the slightest bit. This was the case for Bloodsea's two generals. The other Desolate Arapath's Sect Master, Myriad Poison Path's Sect Master, and Sinister Ghost Path's Sect Master were all looking down, not showing any intention of stepping forward. However, these Tiangang realm experts did not step forward. Instead, a few Blood River Path's elders and disciples charged out. They were clearly the most loyal subordinates of Blood River Path. The moment they came out, essential qis gushed out, and streams of demonic blood light flashed to and fro. Let go of the sect master. However, at the next moment, invisible sword intents slashed onto their bodies, killing all of these Blood River Path's loyal subordinates. These Blood River Path's disciples exploded and scattered on the mountain, leaving behind patches of blood and flesh that splattered on top of the rock stratum. After over 10 people were killed consecutively, not a single person from the Blood River Path's team dared to charge out. Fresh blood splattered before them, and White Azura and the others lowered their heads even lower, like ostriches that had their heads buried. Even their foreheads were faintly dripping with cold sweat. It was because none of them had been able to see through the few sword attacks that Fang Xingjian had casually slashed out earlier. At this moment, Fang Xingjian was a terrifying character who was like a god or a demon to them. However, Fang Xingjian did not pay them any heed. Instead, he stared at Bloodsea in his hand and said softly, "It's still not complete." He then recalled the process where he had forcefully relied on his powers to break through the Great Tao Trial. Faintly, he seemed to have entered deep into the source of this world, arriving at the source of the Tiangang and Disha systems. Over there, he seemed to see an extremely massive figure that could support the heavens and the earth. It was a pity that even with his powers, he was unable to hold on for too long under the endless Tiangang and Disha powers. In just a short instant, the giant figure disappeared, and his consciousness once again returned to the real world. There are two main reasons why I'm unable to enter deeper. One reason might be that I'm from another world and don't belong to this world's Tian and Disha cycle. I'm a virus, an outsider. The other reason is probably that the Great Tao's testimony I have is not complete. Back then, the Demon Emperor had split the Great Tao's testimony into 7 parts, representing the 7 types of authority to control the Tian and Disha Qis. Right now, Blood Sea had gathered 6 types of authority, and Fang Xingjian had 1 piece. However, neither of them was truly complete. Right now, Fang Xingjian planned on gathering the pieces and making them complete once again so that he could explore this world's ultimate profoundness. If I'm able to understand the profoundness of the Tian and Disha in this world, my high-dimensional sword arts might be able to take another step forward, to be able to create a Tian and Disha cycle that stood above the entire world, bringing the birth, aging, sickness, and death of humans, as well as martial arts cultivation into the cycle, and to be able to define the entire world within a spatial fragment. The knowledge, realm, and profoundness contained within this was already in no way inferior to Miracle World's ether particles and a 9-tiered heaven system. At the next moment, countless runes that flickered with faint light appeared in Fang Xingjian's mind. They gathered into a light spot in the blink of an eye and flew into Blood Sea's forehead with a swoosh. This was the Great Tao's testimony that Fang Xingjian had obtained from the illusory, demonic path's Demon Emperor's legacy. Come, let me take a look at this world's profoundness. Boom! Endless white light burst out from Blood Sea's body, and his 4 limbs completely regenerated in the blink of an eye. The Tian Qis and Disha Qis within a range of several thousand lis gushed crazily toward his body. Fang Xingjian's palm grabbed on a Blood Sea's head, and his martial will connected to Blood Sea's brain incessantly. It connected to Blood Sea's vision, hearing, smell, touch, and consciousness, sensing all of Blood Sea's current feelings. Chapter 1046. Fang Xingjian only felt that his consciousness seemed to have instantly broken through the restraints of time and space. It was as if he had entered a boundless ocean, and then he continued to sink, and sink. Throughout the entire process, there seemed to be countless scenes flashing before his eyes. It was as if he had seen the birth and end of the world, as well as the intersecting and circulation of space-time. It was only when he had sunk into the deepest part of the ocean that a figure that was so massive that Fang Xingjian was unable to estimate its size even after exhausting all of his sensory means and computing abilities appeared before him. However, even though he was unable to estimate its size, Fang Xingjian was able to see the silhouette of the figure clearly. It was a man with an indomitable spirit and an extremely strong and mighty body. Every inch of his body and every finger seemed to contain powers that could penetrate through the heavens and the earth. The aura he emitted also surpassed that of any living creature or non-living creature that Fang Xingjian knew of. Fang Xingjian understood that he had not really seen the other party. It was just that the other party's image and information had been sent directly into his mind. At the next moment, he seemed to have suddenly entered deep into the man's body. He could sense each and every one of the most basic particles and spatial units in the other party's body. Each of the spatial fragments, which could not be discerned by the naked eye, contained a world. His body was formed from countless spatial fragments as the most basic unit. Each fragment contained a world and a planet. What level has this person's body, his mass, and his energy reached? Probably the entire Milky Way galaxy's mass is unable to compare to his. Who on earth is he? Just as Fang Xingjian was feeling astonished by the scene before him, his consciousness leaped once again, arriving at a piece of spatial fragment on the other party's arm. As he continued to enter deeper, an azure planet soon appeared before his eyes. This is the planet I'm on. At the next moment, the atmosphere, land, mountains, and rivers were zoomed in. Fang Xingjian saw the Serene mountain, which had been smashed into a mess, the Tian realm expert who wore a horrified expression, and himself who was holding Bloodsea in his hand with a blank gaze. This is the secret of this world. To think that it's just a part of that person's body. He seems to have lost consciousness. Just as Feng Xingjian was recalling the large amount of information he had just received, he also felt the changes in the world around him. At this moment, the world in his eyes seemed to be completely different from before. The wind blowing on his body, the light shining on his back, the particles moving intensely in the air, and the slowly moving earth under his feet. Everything became familiar and strange at the same time. Feng Xingjian felt that they gave him a very intimate feeling, a feeling that they were one. It felt as if the entire world had become a part of him. Feng Xingjian couldn't help but reach out his hand and grab at the sky. Unfortunately, as his thoughts changed, the entire sky did not respond at all. It was as if the feeling of being one with the world was just an illusion. That's right. I'm only sensing it after all. Feng Xingjian turned to look at Bloodsea, who was in his hand. Right now, Bloodsea's body had been completely restored, and there seemed to be countless nebulae flowing in his eyes. He emitted a strange aura, as if he had become one with the entire world. He was also a little similar to the male figure that Feng Xingjian had sensed earlier. Right now, Bloodsea was charging up toward the unparalleled Great Tao Realm. What Feng Xingjian had sensed earlier was what Bloodsea was feeling. However, it was just a feeling and was unable to really affect the real world. Just then, a hint of a smile broke out on Bloodsea's face. Feng Xingjian, you don't know what a foolish thing you've done. The starlight in his eyes flashed slightly, and at the next moment, he turned into an overwhelming sea of blood and broke free from Feng Xingjian's palm. You won't be able to understand. You won't be able to understand my current power. A soft sound rang out, followed by a series of swooshing sounds. In the blink of an eye, Bloodsea had turned into a real sea of blood, and his physical body had turned into blood waves. At the next moment, streams of blood waves soared into the sky, illuminating the entire sky in a blood-red color. Bloodsea's figure, which was completely formed from blood, appeared from the endless blood waves. His arms were facing upwards, as if wanting to hug the entire sky into his embrace. You won't be able to understand what I'm feeling right now. Ants, you don't even understand where you are. The Great Tao Realm far surpasses your imagination. Right now, Bloodsea had completely sunk into the extremely wonderful feeling of being one with the world. At this moment, he felt that he was the entire world, and the entire world was him. With a single thought, he was able to do all sorts of things that were unimaginable or impossible. Hearing Bloodsea's words, the countenances of everyone present changed drastically. At the next moment, Bloodsea's hands suddenly clenched into a fist, and blood started to gush out from the ground. It was as if the ground had turned into human skin. The skin was being torn apart, and a tremendous amount of blood gushed out from the surface. Not only did a tremendous amount of blood start to gush out from the ground, but even the plants, sand, and smoke also melted and turned limp, eventually turning into blood. Within a short few seconds, everyone discovered that the area under their feet was covered in blood. The area below their knees was wrapped up by blood. Everyone was astonished by this scene. To them, this method of directly changing matter and turning the world into a sea of blood was simply a miracle. Some people reached out their hands to touch the blood waves on the ground, while others kept on activating essential cheese to push away the sea of blood. It's real. It's not an illusion. The ground has turned into a sea of blood. The Great Tao Realm. This is the Great Tao Realm. Countless people looked at this scene in astonishment, and they were so touched that tears kept on flowing out from their eyes. This was the feeling of facing the highest realm in martial arts, the astonishment they felt when they saw the ultimate goal they had been pursuing in their entire life. The corners of Heavenly Yiksha's lips twitched slightly. He put out his hand and sensed the blood traces in the air flowing past his palm. It's recorded in the ancient books that the Great Tao Realm is one with the world, able to turn stone into gold and mountains into oceans. I thought that it was just the ignorance of the ancient people, but to think that it's actually true. Just then, the area of the sea of blood expanded once again. Everyone felt that the ground under their feet had become lighter, and it was as if the ground had completely turned into a sea of blood. The serene mountain within a range of 100 lis had disappeared. Regardless of whether it was the mountain terrain, rock strata, mountain peaks, or any other non-living matter, they had all been turned into a sea of blood. Regardless of whether it was the sky or the ground, everything was covered in a scarlet-red color. The crimson stench of blood seemed to connect all the way to the ends of the horizon. Chapter 10:47. Everyone was trapped in this seething blood sea. Zhao Yinglan also looked at this scene in astonishment. Just as her body sank into the blood sea, she had already activated the gang cheese around her and dashed out toward the sky. However, she had just dashed out of the blood sea when another blood wave came smashing down from above her head. The illusory demonic rotation was instantly activated to an extreme. Everything around her, including the sky and the earth, was scarlet red. Wave after wave of wolf heads smashed on her body, but they were rebounded by her gang cheese. However, there seemed to be no end to them, continuously depleting her gang cheese. As her body soaked in this blood sea, Zhao Yinglan felt that her body became increasingly weak. Her gang cheese were also gradually being worn down. "This is the great Tao realm," Zhao Yinglan said in a bitter voice. It said that the demon emperor once turned Middle-earth's Kunlun mountain into the celestial water lake with a single thought. The powers that Blood Sea is displaying right now are in no way weaker than the demon emperor back then. All the illusory emotions past, disciples revealed looks of despair, but the people from the Blood River path cheered one after another. Blood Sea continued to occupy the highest point of the blood-colored sky. He was like a god in the clouds, looking down at the 100 lis blood pool under his feet. He watched as the many Xiantian realm, Disha realm, and even Tiangang realm experts struggled in the layers of blood pool like many ants. After completely obtaining the authority of the Great Tao's testimony, and after the information he had received earlier, his mental state had gone through an overwhelming change. Regardless of whether it was the many experts before him or the various situations in the world, they were all extremely insignificant in his eyes. The countenances of Heavenly Yaksha, White Azura, and the others also changed drastically. At the thought of how they had not resisted earlier, they felt their hearts tremble. They were extremely worried that Blood Sea would look into their actions of rebellion. Heavenly Yaksha mumbled, "I thought that Fang Xian is already an unrivaled top-notch expert in the world. I didn't expect that a cultivator who has truly stepped into the great Tao realm would be so terrifying. I didn't expect that I'd be able to see a great Tao realm cultivator in my lifetime." White Azura also drew in a cold gasp. From today onward, the world will be Blood Sea's era. An unprecedented legend has been born. Fang Xian will definitely lose. Heavenly Yaksha said resolutely. Even the 3 mountains, 4 peaks are unable to stop it. From today onwards, it is inevitable that the Blood River path will rule the world. Every single expert of the Grand Tao realm was a legend, a miracle, and they were favored by all the karmic luck in the world. Since ancient times, they had never been stingy with words to praise this ultimate realm. A great Tao realm expert can move the winds and clouds with a single thought and overturn the universe with a single hand. The Desolate Era Path's sect leader mumbled. This heavenly dipper sovereign of the Devil sect had completely bent his back. If it could be said that he was still filled with hatred and resentment when Heavenly Yaksha and Heavenly Yaksha threatened to poison and control him earlier, then right now, he was completely convinced by Blood Sea, who had attained the great Tao realm. He no longer had any thoughts of resisting. Any cultivator who has reached the great Tao realm is worthy of the respect of all cultivators in the world. He was not the only one. The other sect leaders of the Myriad Poison Path and Sinister Ghost Path had all extinguished their thoughts of resisting. At this moment, they felt great admiration for Blood Sea. Everyone was deeply moved by Blood Sea's remarkable abilities. As for Feng Xian, he was already a dead man in their eyes. Therefore, no one would feel anxious for him. Blood Sea swept his gaze across the world with an indifferent expression until he saw Feng Xingjian, who was still standing in the air without any hint of blood gushing into his body. After stepping into the great Tao realm, Blood Sea had a deeper understanding of the world's profoundness. He also had a deeper understanding of his mission as a heaven-blessed cultivator. Right now, Feng Xingjian had become so insignificant in his eyes, not even worth mentioning. Only the vastness of the world and the universe could stir up great waves in his heart. Feng Xingjian, do you regret helping me attain the great Tao realm right now? Feng Xingjian's marshal will kept on scanning Blood Sea's body, sensing the process of Blood Sea's control of the world's powers. As expected, there's no hint of his own powers. It's as if he's directly commanding this world. After obtaining the great Tao's testimony, does that mean that he's the master of this world? He's obtained that person's authority. After all, the entire world is just a part of his body. Rather than saying that it's a type of martial arts realm, it's better to say that he's obtained administrator authority. At the thought of that person, that extremely massive and endless figure once again appeared in Feng Xingjian's mind. Just then, he heard Blood Sea's words. Raising his head and looking at Blood Sea, who was standing at the highest point, Feng Xingjian said calmly, "Have you had enough fun?" Blood Sea frowned. The indifference in Feng Xingjian's gaze made him unhappy. Therefore, he tapped out with a finger, and a myriad of blood waves rose up high. They eventually turned into a huge, overwhelming palm that pressed down toward Feng Xingjian. With a single palm, almost the entire Black Dragon Mountain Ranges area was covered. The center of the attack was covered in darkness due to the sunlight being blocked. Countless people cried out and fled in all directions. Under this natural disaster-like attack, they were unable to summon any will to resist at all. However, at the next moment, several streams of sword cheese cut across the sky and slashed onto the blood palm. The entire blood palm instantly exploded, turning into blood rain that splattered down. Simultaneously, Feng Xingjian took a step forward and appeared before Blood Sea. He estimated the data he had just observed. The area of influence is about 500 kilometers in diameter. Blood Sea let out a cold laugh. It's useless. Right now, I can already control the entire world and control everything. The invisible and formless high-dimensional sword realm had already encompassed the sky above the entire Blood Sea. Feng Xingjian formed seals with both hands, and a huge golden palm imprint slowly appeared in midair. This was the first time that the royal heavenly great palm imprint he had learned from the prince had appeared in his hands. Compared to Blood Sea's huge palm earlier, it was at least 3 times bigger. In an instant, everyone present felt their vision blur, and they were transported out of the Blood Sea through spatial translocation. At the next moment, a huge royal heavenly great palm imprint slapped down slowly in the sky, like a huge golden mountain. Wherever it passed by, the atmosphere would seethe and the ground would sink. It was a great scene of the heavens collapsing and the earth cracking. Under the royal heavenly great palm imprint, the entire stretch of Blood Sea started seething. Before the imprint arrived, that violent power had already caused large areas of blood water to start to evaporate. Right now, Feng Xingjian's power could encompass the entire land. It was too easy for him to evaporate an entire stretch of Blood Sea. Moreover, there would not be any side effects when he performed his powers with the high-dimensional sword realm and directed them at Blood Sea. Impossible. Blood Sea bellowed out crazily, and an overwhelming sea of blood soared into the sky. It turned into a huge crimson-red dragon and smashed toward the descending palm imprint. Blood Sea bellowed furiously, "Break!" However, at the next moment, the crimson dragon let out a world-shaking and agonizing cry. It was as if it was an earthworm that had been clenched in the palm of Blood Sea's hand, and it was squeezed toward the ground. As a loud rumble rang out, the royal heavenly great palm imprint collided fiercely with the ground. The entire stretch of Blood Sea was instantly vaporized by this extreme power, and a series of ripples that could be seen by the naked eye appeared on the ground. Endless sand and rock layers gushed out in all directions like a series of waves. Chapter 1048. The entire stretch of Blood Sea dissipated, leaving behind only the blood dragon, who was suppressed by the royal heavenly great palm imprint. The blood on his body kept on evaporating. Blood Sea, who had turned into a blood dragon, wore an expression of indignation. He unleashed the great Tao realm's authority to the extreme. Regardless of whether it was the atmosphere, rock strata, white clouds, or underground water, everything within a range of 500 kilometers was incessantly used by him to replenish his blood, becoming a part of the blood dragon's body. The gravitational force, electromagnetic force, strong force, and weak force within a range of 500 kilometers were unleashed concurrently. All of them were channeled into the blood dragon's body, allowing him to keep on resisting the huge palm that was descending from the sky. Open up! As a furious bellow rang out, piercing white light burst out from the blood dragon's body. It was as if a myriad of nuclear missiles had exploded at the same time, turning into pure brute force that charged out toward the huge palm. Although he did not understand the logic behind this and did not understand the principles behind the circulation of power, however, he had the authority to control the powers of the world. Under Blood Sea's strong command, all the powers of the world within a range of 500 kilometers were unleashed explosively to the extreme. As the blood dragon and the huge palm collided intensely, streams of force flew out from the point of contact between the two of them. They were like streams of shock waves that destroyed the surroundings. The huge dragon's body kept on twisting and breaking free from the huge palm's pressure, rolling continuously on the ground. The tremors in the ground were like a series of magnitude 10 earthquakes. Many cracks that were several tens of kilometers in length were torn open, and many valleys and hills were created. Sand and dust that could drown the entire divine capital soared into the sky. At the next moment, they turned into streams of blood waves. The atmosphere also turned into the most violent tempest as the two of them fought. It blew large areas of the surrounding forests, plants, and even many experts who were watching the battle up into the sky. This round of exchange was an earth-shattering battle, toppling mountains and rivers. Other than the endless tempest, tremors, and explosions, the people outside could no longer see the situation of the battle clearly. In the center of the battlefield, dragons' roars kept on ringing out. As the matter within a range of 500 kilometers continued to be converted, a tremendous amount of material from the outside world gushed over due to the battlefield's vacuum. The blood dragon's powers were also increasing at an unbelievable speed. Roar! Each of his muscles and scales seemed to be unleashing a power that could destroy an entire city. The blood dragon stepped out into the air, pushing back the royal heavenly great palm imprint with each step. I can't accept this. I've already attained the great Tao realm. I'm already one with the world. I'm a heaven-blessed cultivator favored by destiny. Fang Xian, what makes you think you can fight me? Roar! A power that caused even Fang Xingjian to be slightly astonished burst out from Blood Sea's body. The blood dragon's physical body collided into the atmosphere, turning the air molecules into plasma. Just a thousandth of the kinetic energy of the collision had transformed into heat energy, turning the entire battlefield into a barren land. The gas turned into a mass of plasma and soared into the sky, directly smashing a hole in the atmosphere that led straight to outer space. Countless mountains and rivers turned upside down, and the earth was torn apart. The power of the two attacks directly created a huge canyon that was more than 5 or 6 kilometers wide and more than 300 kilometers long outside the Great Wall. Even many officials of the imperial court who were far away in the divine capital could sense the faint tremors coming from the ground. The royal heavenly great palm imprint was shattered by this astonishing attack. Roar! However, just as the blood dragon raised his head and let out a long roar toward the endless sky, celebrating his victory, There seemed to be countless golden lights flashing in the sky, and similar royal heavenly great palm imprints floated in void space. There were over 10,000 of them, and they exuded a terrifying pressure. Looking at Blood Sea, who had gone into a complete daze halfway through his roar, Feng Xingjian said calmly, "You can't not accept this." At the next moment, he pressed down with a single palm, and a myriad of royal heavenly great palm imprints smashed out toward the blood dragon like countless asteroids. In an instant, seething air currents swept out in all directions, and the entire plains beyond the Great Wall trembled crazily. Golden light pillars soared into the sky, seeming to connect to the Gangchis beyond the heavens. Countless herdsmen sensed the crazy tremors from the ground under their feet and looked at the golden light that connected to the heavens and earth in the distance. All of them wore horrified expressions, thinking that the gods in the heavens were enraged. All of them dropped to their knees and kept on kowtowing in the direction of the Serene Mountain. A young lady prostrated herself on the ground with a face full of tears, using her mouth to kiss the cracked ground. "God, please forgive our sins. Oh, great God, please stop the divine punishment that you've sent down." On the plains, countless herds of sheep, cows, wolves, and all sorts of other animals let out uneasy cries. They fled in all directions, toward the directions that they felt to be safe. They formed groups of beasts that were fleeing crazily. With a single attack, the world changed, and the many experts from the demon sect who were the closest to it could sense it even more deeply. They looked at the many pieces of land that soared into the sky, the swollen land, and the sunken mountain peaks. They looked at the topography that required several 10,000 years of movement from the land's tectonic plates to be completed within a few minutes. The countenances of heavenly Yiksha, white Azura, and the others were all pale. This was a sign of reverence toward a majestic force that was comparable to nature. When the dust settled, the entire Serene Mountain, as well as the land within a range of 500 kilometers, had turned into a huge crater. The bottom of the crater was smooth, as if someone had used a shovel to scoop it. This world-changing battle was like a myth or a legend. At the next moment, a stream of light and shadow flashed before them, and Feng Xingjian once again appeared before them. He was holding something that looked like a glass sphere in his hand. There were layers of blood-red fog in it, and a huge eye was floating in it. A blood-color vortex kept on spinning in the eye. The eye seemed to contain endless vengeance and vengeance, cursing everything in the world. It was Blood Sea, who had been sealed up after being defeated by Feng Xingjian. At the sight of this scene, how could the people present not know that Feng Xingjian had obtained the final victory? All of the people from the illusory demonic path knelt down on one knee and cheered. "Long live the Emperor! Long live the Emperor! Long live the Emperor!" Several hundred martial arts experts shouted out at the same time, and essential chis connected together, turning into a chi field that shook the atmosphere. It was like the roars of mountains and tsunamis. The countenances of the remaining heavenly Yiksha and the others stiffened as they looked at this scene awkwardly, not knowing what to do. Feng Xingjian's gaze swept past them, and he gave an order. From today onward, Zhao Yinglan will unify the demon sect's 7 paths and merge them into the Imperial Court's Forbidden Army. We'll establish an independent prefecture. It'll be called the Heavenly Plan Prefecture. After witnessing this world-shattering battle, no one else dared to go against Feng Xingjian. Regardless of whether they were Tiangang realm, Disha realm, or Xiantian realm, all of them prostrated on the ground without any objections. Chapter 1049. At the side, Zhao Yinglan revealed a hint of a smile, feeling extremely overjoyed. The great cause of unifying the sacred sect's 7 paths had finally been completed in her hands. Moreover, she had also managed to cozy up to someone like Feng Xingjian. Right now, everyone in the illusory emotions path was feeling extremely grateful for their choice. This might be the best choice they had ever made in their lives. However, Feng Xingjian frowned slightly and suddenly lifted his head, looking toward the east. Just as his gaze pierced through the void space that was several hundred kilometers away, a hint of spatial ripple was slowly dissipating. Middle-earth, Tanyun Mountain. This mountain was like a heavenly pillar that pierced straight into the clouds, and the high areas were all encompassed by stacking layers of white clouds. It was the Three Mountains, Four Peaks Tianyun's sex location, Tianyun Mountain. A black spatial crack suddenly appeared on an empty land on Tianyun Mountain. Xiao Shun's figure darted out with a flash. However, even though he had used his ability to shatter space to traverse several thousand kilometers and escape back to Tianyun Mountain from beyond the borders, Xiao Shun's countenance was still pale, and there were hints of terror in his eyes. He's discovered me. Until now, he still felt a pain as if his body had been pierced through by countless sharp swords. He can kill me. Why didn't he do so? The terror of being extremely close to death was still reverberating in Xiao Shun's body. At this moment, he suddenly had a feeling. This Fang Xian is probably even more terrifying than Marie. Right now, there were two old men standing next to Xiao Shun. They had sage-like appearances and had pine and crane bones. As the two of them stood there, it was as if they were no longer separated from the world around them. Tiangang cheese would constantly descend from the sky, and Disha cheese would gush out from underground, gushing into their bodies. These two old men were the two supreme elders of the Three Mountains, Four Peaks Tianyun Mountain, and Longevity Mountain. They were also the strongest experts in the Three Mountains, Four Peaks, and were also the instructors who had taught Xiao Shun martial arts since he was young. This person from Skycloud Mountain was called Qian Huang. He was a peak expert whose name had spread throughout the world for over 100 years. In the past, he had always been recognized as the strongest person in the Central Plains. He was the #1 person of the Central Plains' righteous path, the uncrowned king of the martial arts world, and the leader of the righteous path. The other person, Ru Zi, who came from the 10,000 Years Mountain, did not have a prominent reputation in the pugilistic world. However, Xiao Shun deeply understood how terrifying Ru Zi was. His 10,000 years gang cheese, which he had cultivated for 100 years, could be said to be the world's greatest inner force cultivation. Of course, with the appearance of Fang Xian and Marie, there was no guarantee that he would still be the best in the world. However, he was still a top-notch expert in the world. Besides, they were different from the fragmented evil cult. Three Mountains, Four Peaks had a complete legacy, and they also had a foundation that had occupied Middle-earth for hundreds of years. They also had plenty of trump cards up their sleeves during critical moments. In particular, the legacies regarding the Great Tao's testimony were extremely complete. Not only did they have the Great Tao's testimonies left behind by the Great Tao realm experts of the Three Mountains, Four Peaks in the past, but they also gathered the legacies and Great Tao's testimonies left behind by other Great Tao realm experts in history. Seeing that Xiao Shun had returned from shattering void space, Qian Huang asked, "How was it? You didn't find blood, see?" In order to deal with Marie, who had risen up in power, they planned on joining forces with the demon sect this time around. By doing this, they could strengthen their side and increase their chances of winning. On the other hand, in recent years, Blood Sea, a heaven-blessed cultivator, had been growing rapidly in strength and influence. Just like Marie, he had become a great threat to the Three Mountains, Four Peaks. It would be great if they could get both sides to fight and deplete each other's strength. Hearing that, Xiao Shun smiled bitterly and shook his head. When I went over, Blood Sea was leading 5 Tiangang realm experts to attack the illusory emotions path. However, who knew that Fang Xian would suddenly appear? Fang Xian? Qian Huang said in surprise. That young emperor from the divine capital? Why is he at the Serene Mountain? He frowned. Marie went as well? From what he knew, only Marie, who had appeared out of nowhere, had sufficient martial prowess to interfere with the demon sect's internal strife. Marie didn't go, Xiao Shun said with a bitter smile, but Fang Xian is probably even more terrifying than Marie. Looking at their puzzled gazes, Xiao Shun told them about what he had seen, how Fang Xingzhan easily suppressed Blood Sea, then how he channeled the Demon Emperor's Great Tao's testimony into Blood Sea's body, and then the world-shaking battle. Upon hearing the things that had happened beyond the borders, a hint of astonishment flashed in the eyes of the two old men from the three mountains' four peaks. This was especially so when they heard the soul-stirring parts, causing their minds to waver a little. You're saying that Blood Sea gathered 7 sets of the demon sect's great Tao's testimony and obtained the complete legacy of the demon emperor back then? Qian Huang asked solemnly. That's right. Xiao Shan nodded and said, he gathered the complete demon sect's great Tao's testimony. With a single thought, he turned the area within a range of several hundred lis into a sea of blood, smelting the entire serene mountain. Such remarkable powers. Qian Huang sighed and said, the legacy of the demon emperor has the effect of transforming matter. Blood Sea's remarkable powers are probably already comparable to those of the demon emperor back then. And then Fang Xinjian broke through Blood Sea's demonic arts? Ruzi asked immediately. That's right. He performed a great palm imprint technique that is very similar to the one Marie performed. With a single palm, the force of his palm encompassed a range of 100 lis as they listened to Xiao Shun slowly narrating the world-shattering battle. The two old men's emotions kept on fluctuating. Fang Xian. Right now, Qian Huang's brows were tightly furrowed. This old man, who had a great reputation for over 100 years and was the leader of the righteous sects, was currently feeling extremely worried. As the leader of the three mountains' four peaks, he was definitely unwilling to see the rise of a powerful imperial court. The relationship between the imperial court and the pugilistic world had always been one where one party was strong and the other party was weak. He could already imagine that once Fang Xian gained a firm foothold, cleared the world, and reunified the Central Plains, the great Jin dynasty would probably welcome a prosperous era once again. The imperial court's prosperity was the martial arts world's tragedy. No emperor will be able to tolerate a place like the pugilistic world, which they could not control, to exist for a long period of time. Moreover, this place also controlled the world's top-notch martial prowess. This was an irreconcilable conflict between the martial arts sects represented by the three mountains, four peaks, and the imperial court. We mustn't hesitate anymore, Ruzi said. If we continue to drag this out and allow that Fang Xian to truly grow up, we probably won't be able to deal with him even if we want to. Qian Huang did not say anything. He merely looked at Xiao Shun and asked, Shan'er, what do you think? Xiao Shun said firmly, mobilize all our savings and contact the various sects in the world. We'll gather the strongest powers within the shortest amount of time and kill Fang Xian in one fell swoop. The world doesn't need such an emperor. That's right. Qian Huang seemed to have made up his mind and said slowly, take out all the great Tao's testimony in the vault. It's meaningless to fight against Fang Xian if one isn't at the great Tao realm. It's just that if one isn't a heaven-blessed cultivator forcefully uses the great Tao's testimony, they'll probably only be left with 7 to 8 years of lifespan. Heaven-blessed cultivators were favored by the world's providence. They were the only existences who would not have any side effects after integrating with the great Tao's testimony. Chapter 1050. Hearing that, Ruzi laughed out loud, appearing extremely arrogant. With Sun-Er around, our three mountains, four peaks will be able to be passed down through the ages. Moreover, my old bones have 1 foot in the coffin. It doesn't matter if I die a few years earlier or a few years later. Qian Huang nodded and looked at Xiao Shun. Sun-Er, you're a heaven-blessed cultivator to begin with, and now that you've comprehended the means to shatter void space, you'll definitely be able to perfectly integrate our three mountains, four peaks, great Tao's testimony. You'll be the main force in the upcoming battle. It's a pity. If you can wait until your realm increases a little more before using the great Tao's testimony, your powers will be even stronger after you attain a breakthrough. It's a pity that we don't have the time. At the mention of this, various schemes flashed in his eyes. If we wish to perfectly unleash the powers of the great Tao's testimony, we'll need at least 1 more year to get used to it. Only then will we be able to unleash our strongest battle prowess. A hint of cold gleam flashed in Xiao Shun's eyes. We can join forces with the various sects in the world. All of them probably want to have the imperial court riding on their necks. There's also the three princes in the south, Liang Bo in the east, and the other feudal vassals. They probably won't be willing to resign themselves to death. Therefore, in the days that followed, the three mountains' four peaks operated at full force. Countless indistinct news circulated among the various major influences in the world. The three mountains' four peaks have been operating in Middle-earth for countless years. They had deep roots, and their influence far surpassed anyone's imagination. Under their influence, changes soon appeared among the influences in the world. An alliance with the imperial court and the divine capital as their greatest opponents gradually formed. Fang Xingjian looked in the direction where Xiao Shun had disappeared and fell silent for a while. He was slowly sensing the difference the world had toward him. After suppressing the Blood Sea within a range of several hundred leagues and changing the entire Serene mountain range, he immediately sensed that the entire world seemed to have developed a faint hostility toward him. This feeling was as if he was stuck in a layer of sticky glue. Each and every one of his actions had a strong resistance from the entire world. Fang Xingjian's sudden inspiration even had a feeling that if he were to unleash such intense powers again, the world's repulsion toward him would be even stronger. It might even push him out of this world. When he had wanted to make a move against the cultivator who had escaped earlier, Xiao Shun, this feeling of being number one had risen by countless times. After all, this world is a part of that man's body, so the will of this world is that man's will. When I entered this place, it was like a foreign body or a virus outside of my body. So, if I cause too much of a commotion, it will instinctively reject me. Of course, it's also possible that it's because I've defeated heaven-blessed cultivators. Fang Xingjian looked at the ball in his palm, at the blood sea that he had sealed up. It represents the heaven-blessed cultivators in this world. Is that person who escaped earlier also a heaven-blessed cultivator? Is that why I want to make a move against him? That's why I'll attract even more hostility? Even after I left, I couldn't sense his existence. Is the entire world shielding him? Then the relationship between heaven-blessed cultivators and the world's will. Right now, Fang Xingjian could clearly sense that with his actions of suppressing the Blood Sea, this world seemed to suddenly have an extremely strong sense of enmity toward him. It was as if the atmosphere, land, mountains, rain, and sunlight were constantly trying to kill him. This kind of omnipresent enmity could turn any ordinary person into a lunatic in an instant. However, no matter what the real reason was, Fang Xingjian did not plan on unleashing too much of his powers within a short period of time. Otherwise, if he were to really be squeezed out of this world, it would be hard for Fang Xingjian to predict what the consequences would be. If he were unable to return to Miracle World because of this, it would be very troublesome. He lowered his head, looked at Zhao Yinglan, and said, "The heavenly plan manor will be working in the divine capital from now on. Gather everyone within half a month and bring them back to the divine capital. Your subject obeys your orders." Zhao Yinglan knelt down and accepted the order. There seemed to be flames burning in her eyes. She had already made up her mind to handle this matter beautifully and increase her and the sacred sex standing in Fang Xingjian's heart. However, with a flash, Fang Xingjian returned to the divine capital's palace through spatial translocation. He then anxiously started to study the profoundness of Blood Sea's body. He still had too much to understand about heaven-blessed cultivators, the great Tao realm, the great Tao's testimony, and this world's will. In the small, transparent sphere, the blood-colored fog moved slightly along with the crimson eyes, and Blood Sea's voice darted out from within. "Fang Xian, what on earth are you trying to do?" His tone was filled with exasperation and fury. After stepping into the great Tao realm, he was then suppressed on the spot and sealed into a sphere. It was as if he had fallen from the clouds into a swamp. Given his pride, how could he possibly tolerate this? However, Fang Xingjian flicked the glass sphere gently with his finger and said, "It's nothing. I'm just studying you. You'll regret this." Blood Sea said furiously, Fang Xingjian shook his head and clenched his fists slightly. The blood sea in the glass sphere immediately changed its shape, as if there were Tiangang cheese and Disha cheese extending out from it. Blood sea might be a very good energy source. While he was studying blood sea, the eyes of Fang Xingjian's other clone in the study on the other side of the palace flickered slightly. 30% of my powers should be used to study blood sea, the secrets of heaven-blessed cultivators, and the great Tao realm. The remaining 70% can be used to cultivate the royal heavenly great art and develop the imperial court's powers. After all, I can't casually make a move now. Developing the imperial court's powers could, on one hand, support the cultivation of the Son of Heaven's Qi nurturing art and the Lie's wisdom seal, raising his abilities. On the other hand, he could no longer casually make a move now. Therefore, the powers of his subordinates were very important. After handing over the profoundness of blood sea and the great Tao's testimony to his clone, Fang Xingjian focused his attention on the imperial court's development. With a slight movement of his consciousness, the complete scene of the two regions, as well as a large part of the Beiyuan region, appeared in his consciousness. With the prince's continuous battles during this period of time, most of the Beiyuan region had fallen into Fang Xingjian's hands once again. The profoundness of the royal heavenly great art isn't inferior to the great Tao's testimony. Both of them are good accumulations, and they're also very helpful to the improvement of my sword arts. Then the imperial court's development mustn't stagnate. Not only will it be helpful to my cultivation, but it can also reduce the amount of work that the prince and I have to do. Fang Xingjian understood that since he would be boycotted, then if the prince were to make too many moves, he would probably be boycotted by this world as well. He did not know that the prince had already defeated a heaven-blessed cultivator. If the prince had not shattered void space and escaped previously, the prince would probably be the first person to sense the world's hostility. If that's the case, then I can't just focus on raising the quality of life. I'll have to rapidly increase the imperial court's military prowess. Fang Xingjian immediately thought of ways to increase the imperial court's power. With his great accumulation, he immediately thought of 4 to 5 ways to strengthen the military and cultivators. Chapter 1051. The first thing that Fang Xingjian thought of in order to increase the strength of the cultivators under him was technological enhancements. After all other martial arts and ultimate skills required time to cultivate. Fang Xingjian did not have that much time to nurture his subordinates in this world. On the contrary, he could just create technological weapons for them to use. For example, the Divine Emperor that he had defeated in the parallel world had a mechanical army that could sweep across the entire planet. The Divine Emperor was also equipped with various plasma weapons, particle cannons, positron cannons, antimatter cannons, and many others. There was also the corresponding artificial intelligence. In order to increase his cultivation, Fang Xingjian had seized a tremendous amount of technological information from this army. However, in the past, he had only dabbled in the scientific principles to increase his strength. He had not paid attention to the construction of various machines and weapons. After that, these information had been stored in his memories and had never been used before. However, right now, he could try to create technological weapons in this world to increase the strength of his subordinates. With his cultivation, which could allow him to change the world, enter the microscopic world, and even translocate and distort space, it was a piece of cake for him. With his technological prowess and productivity, he could create a large number of high technological weapons. It was just that in the past, creating these weapons had been meaningless to him. His martial prowess was completely above these weapons. However, it was just right for his subordinates in this world to use. First, ordinary people and Xiantian realm experts. Fang Xingjian stroked his chin, and a tremendous amount of information regarding weapons flashed in his mind. Xiantian realm experts are equivalent to first transition realm experts. Each of them can be comparable to a tank. For Xiantian realm experts and ordinary people, I need a weapon that can be equipped in large quantities, is easy to use, and can pose a threat to Xiantian realm experts or even Disha realm experts. Although Fang Xingjian had powerful productivity and technological prowess, it was impossible for him to create all sorts of high technological equipment endlessly. Therefore, different experts would be equipped with different levels of weapons. Priority would be given to Tiangang realm experts, who had the most difficulty in creating weapons that required the most resources. Weapons that could be mass-produced would be given to ordinary Xiantian realm experts. Therefore, there is a need to plan how the weapons would be distributed. As Fang Xingjian pondered, the blueprint of a weapon soon appeared before him. Electromagnetic rifle. Able to shoot out U-238 depleted uranium armor-piercing bullets at 5 times the speed of sound. It can penetrate through the armor of most main battle tanks. Controlled by capacitor system, there's no sound and no recoil. Looking at the electromagnetic rifle in his mind, Fang Xingjian understood that this was definitely a weapon that was most suitable for low-level cultivators. Not only was it easy to operate, it was also very powerful and had no recoil. If an army of several 10,000 were to have, even Disha realm experts would have to run if they encountered them, unless they sent Tiangang realm experts. Ordinary innate stage martial artists mainly have electromagnetic rifles. They can also be paired with a set of exoskeleton armor, a communication system, and an internal circulation system. Fang Xingjian's consciousness moved rapidly, and very soon a large number of design blueprints and documents kept on jumping out from the technological information he had snatched from the Divine Emperor. Have of all. X. To's Fang to war, to the military, had thought. Thought. S. Fang power to the military under him. To say a military, the Disha realm is equivalent to the second transition of knights. There's a huge difference between 1 acupuncture point and 72 acupuncture points. At this level, electromagnetic rifles and exoskeleton armors appear to be of little value. At this realm, electromagnetic rifles and exoskeleton armors appear to be of little value. As Fang Xingjian pondered over the information on Disha realm cultivators, various weapons and documents kept on flashing in his mind. This biological armor isn't bad. Fang Xingjian soon found a biological armor known as the Universe Knight system. It was not entirely accurate to call a biological armor. This system was a special modification system that was implanted in the human body. Once it was activated, it would be able to draw out positive and antimatter particles from quantum vacuum. The positive particles would then form exoskeleton armors and various weapons. The antimatter particles would be stored in the body's antimatter storage, ready to be combined with positive matter at any moment to be used as an energy source. The highest speed within the atmospheric layer is Mach 10. The exoskeleton armor is also equipped with electromagnetic shields, plasma beam, swords, laser floating cannons, and the most powerful antimatter cannons. Looking at the information on the Universe Knight system, Fang Xingjian broke into a satisfied smile. The technology needed to create this item had already reached Tier 5 of the divine level. Microscopic operations, the extraction of positive and antimatter, and all sorts of electromagnetic technology. However, these were not a problem for him. Once the system was created and equipped by a Disha realm cultivator, an existence like Fang Xingjian would naturally not think much of it. However, to other Disha realm cultivators, it would be almost impossible for them to win. If I were to use the Universe Knight system, ordinary Disha realm cultivators will be able to fight against Tiangang realm experts. Even Tiangang realm cultivators would be in trouble if the antimatter cannons hit them. Fang Xingjian could already imagine the astonished reactions of the experts in this world when they were faced with the Universe Knight system. However, the technical difficulty in creating this thing is a little high. Also, the materials needed for the Crystal Mother Box are also very precious. I probably won't be able to produce them endlessly. However, if I can create over 10 or several tens of them, it'll be enough. The others can just use the low-spec version. Other than the high-spec version that Feng Xingjian had seen at the beginning, the Universe Night system also had a common low-spec version. Mach 3 speed in the atmospheric layer, superalloy outer shell, high-frequency saber, and high-energy photon cannon. Although it can't be compared to the high-spec version, it'll be enough to deal with most Disha Realm cultivators. After making the arrangements for the Disha Realm cultivators, Feng Xingjian started to think about the equipment for Tiangang Realm cultivators. Currently, all of the Tiangang Realm cultivators under Feng Xingjian were from the Demon Sect. Including Zhao Lan, there were a total of 6 of them. Feng Xingjian's Tiangang Realm weapons were meant to be able to go up against Great Dao Realm cultivators. I have to be on guard. Other than Blood Sea, there might be other Great Dao Realm cultivators in this world. This is especially so for orthodox sects like the Three Mountains, Four Peaks. Their legacies are more complete and robust than the demon sects. The demon sect has been split up for several centuries, and a large part of their legacies have been severed. Even when they escaped beyond the borders, they were still able to produce a Blood Sea. It might not be impossible for them to produce a few Great Dao Realm experts as well. However, Great Dao Realm experts could directly control the powers of the world, and their physical bodies did not even need to exist. If Tiangang Realm experts were to go up against such opponents, the weapons and equipment required would be even stronger. Many confidential documents flashed past Feng Xingjian's eyes, and countless weapons were eliminated by him. Chapter 1052. It's able to control the powers of the world. The moment ordinary weapons appear, they'll probably be transformed or even controlled directly. It needs to be stronger and more perfect. It'd be best if it can have at least 1% of my powers. Countless powerful and mysterious super-technological weapons were eliminated by Feng Xingjian. Most of them were things that even the Divine Emperor in the past had not been able to create. Finally, a super-technological creation appeared before Feng Xingjian. It was an ultimate weapon that even the Divine Emperor in the parallel Earth had put in great effort to create, but had not been able to do so. It was a superb creation that possessed unrivaled capabilities. Looking at the figure in the document, Feng Xingjian finally revealed a hint of satisfaction. Androids, not bad. They're enough to go up against Great Dao Realm experts. There's no need for Tiangang Realm experts to equip them. Looking at the android's various capabilities, Feng Xingjian appeared increasingly satisfied. If the Divine Emperor had created this thing back when he had fought against him, it would have been very hard for him to defeat him. However, with his current realm, it wouldn't be too difficult for him to turn around and create these androids. He could even add many other technological weapons to these androids. Therefore, in the time that followed, many huge metal factories rose up in the divine capital's outskirts, attracting countless people's curious gazes. Within the 3 regions, countless mountains and rivers were excavated and moved. A tremendous amount of mineral deposits were moved into the factories by Feng Xingjian to be used to create weapons. There was no need for production lines or workers. As the high-dimensional sword realm struck out streams of power toward the material world, various matter interfered with each other. All sorts of high, low, sterile, and sealed environments were created. All sorts of mineral deposits underwent all sorts of changes out of nowhere. They were interfered with by waves of invisible powers and turned into various spare parts. In the end, they were assembled together to form all sorts of weapons. A tremendous number of electromagnetic rifles and exoskeleton armors were continuously produced. As for the Universe Night system and the androids, they took up even more of Feng Xingjian's energy. Feng Xingjian opened up a huge building under the factory that had a depth of 50 kilometers. It was specially used for the creation of Universe Knights and androids. Just the resources spent on the various spare parts and weapons would be sufficient to build several hundred aircraft carriers on Earth. At the same time, the construction of the infrastructure in the Jing region and the Serene region did not stop. To Feng Xingjian, this was much easier than the construction of weapons. All sorts of cars, cement roads, electrical circuits, and sewers were built. The cities, especially the divine capital, were changing with each passing day. Many ordinary people found it hard to accept this. Just as Feng Xingjian was building up infrastructure and armaments, the prince was about to complete the final conquest of the Beiyuan region. In the capital of the Northern Plains province, outside the northern garrison city, the prince, who was dressed in a white veil, stood in the air. The cold wind from the north brushed against her body, lifting up the white veil on her body. Coupled with her cold expression, she looked like a fairy from the Moon Palace who had descended into the mortal world. Although she appeared harmless, and could even be said to be beautiful and moving, many soldiers on the city walls of the northern garrison city seemed as if they were facing a great enemy. They looked at the prince as if they were looking at some world-destroying monster. During this period of time, the prince had wreaked havoc in the Beiyuan region, and his infamy was too great. During this period of time, there were deserters from Prince Xian's remnant troops almost every day. Prince Xian had only left behind several 10,000 soldiers to guard the Beiyuan region. Right now, there were only some old, weak, sick, and disabled people left on the city walls of the northern garrison city. There were only several hundred of them, and once the battle broke out, they would probably surrender immediately. Right now, the northern garrison city was in a state of chaos due to the prince's arrival. Some came to cause trouble by smashing and looting. Some wanted to escape from the city, and some wanted to open the city gates to surrender. However, most of the ordinary people hid in their own homes, trembling in fear. Without the military suppression, the entire city was in a state of chaos. In Prince Xian's Prince Manor, Prince Xian's third son, Feng Tao, was anxiously walking through the manor's long corridors like an ant on a hot pan. As Prince Xian's third son, he had been carefully nurtured since young. His cultivation had reached the Disha realm, and he had cultivated a total of 30 acupuncture points. He had always been known as a virtuous person among the officials of Shilin and the Beiyuan region, and he was in charge of the Beiyuan region's financial affairs all year round. After Prince Xian led the army into battle, he was in charge of guarding the Beiyuan region. Right now, Feng Tao was halfway there when he suddenly saw a guard running toward the Prince Manor's back door while carrying a big bag. A hint of killing intent immediately flashed on Feng Tao's face. "How dare you!" A stream of sword chi shot out from his fingertip, piercing through the guard's calf. That guard let out an agonizing cry and fell to the ground. When he saw Feng Tao, he immediately begged loudly, "Young master, please spare me. I've been blinded by lard. Young master, please spare me. I won't dare to do it again." Feng Tao ignored him and opened up the bag. He immediately saw a large amount of gold and silver tableware, as well as jade and antiques. "Dog slave, you dare to betray me?" Looking at the infuriated Feng Tao, the guard seemed to know that it was useless no matter how he tried to explain himself. He scolded loudly. "Prince Xian Manor has rebelled. Now that the imperial court's army is here, what awaits you is death and your clan's annihilation. I'm just a guard, and I don't know anything at all. Yet, I've been sentenced to death. Can't I escape? Be ****starred. Feng Tao felt fury attacking his heart. The thing he was most worried about had been said out loud, causing a hint of horror to appear in his eyes. He tapped out with a finger, and a whistling sword chi tore through the air, slashing the guard into countless pieces of minced meat. "I can't hesitate anymore." Looking at the minced meat on the ground, Feng Tao took a step forward and quickly headed toward the backyard. Along the way, he saw more and more servants who wanted to steal things and then escape. There were even some stewards and butlers among them. After Feng Tao killed over 10 people consecutively, his emotions gradually turned from fury to horror. The fear toward the future was like a cold winter wind blowing on his body, causing him to feel ice cold from head to toe. The will of the people has dispersed. A feeling that the situation was hopeless filled his entire body, and it strengthened his resolve to escape. Feng Tao came to a house in the backyard. Over 10 married women and children had already gathered. The women's eyes were bloodshot, and they looked like they were crying. This made Feng Tao feel even more irritated. These were the important family members of Prince Xian Manor. Ordinary concubines and children born out of concubines had not been notified. It was because Fong Tao knew that if he were to escape, the fewer people there were, the better. Seeing Fong Tao's appearance, the many married women immediately surrounded him anxiously, chattering away. "Tower, how is it? Has that Marie really fought her way over? Can the troops in the city fend them off? Boo-hoo! Won't the imperial court kill us? No matter what, we're still members of the Fong clan." "All of you shut up." Just as the many married women were making a ruckus, a noble woman with long black hair coiled up high, holding onto a walking stick and wearing silk long robes, stepped out. She said furiously, "What's with all the crying? At a time like this, all of you better shut up." This noblewoman with great prestige was Prince Xian's wife. She was the matriarch of the Prince Xian Manor, Lady He. Chapter 1053. Madam He looked at Fong Tao and asked directly, "Tower, are you going to flee?" Fong Tao sighed and said, "The bandits are too powerful. I'm afraid that most of the people in Northgard City are no longer under their control. We can only retreat for now." Although the answer was within her expectations, a trace of melancholy still flashed through Madam He's eyes. She shook her head and said, "I don't understand military matters. You make the arrangements." Hearing the conversation between the two of them, many of the women and children present immediately cried out loudly. They had lived in luxury since they were young, so how could they dare to face the pain of fleeing? "No, I don't want to leave the palace. If you want me to leave the prince's mansion, I would rather die here." There are also people who collapse to the ground, their eyes lifeless. "Run? Where can we run to? The world is so big. Where can the Son of Heaven not manage?" Someone cried, "Why don't we surrender? After all, Fong Xian is our nephew. He might let us live." However, not long after the crying started, Madam He knocked on her walking stick and said, "Why are you crying? Now is the moment of life and death for the Wangfu. No one should hold me back. That kid Fong Xian wants to wipe out our King Xian's clan. We are his kin, the royal clan. Such a cold-blooded, heartless, and fatherless person. From now on, he is no longer our relative, much less our emperor. All descendants of Prince Xian must take the responsibility of overthrowing the great Jin dynasty." At this moment, Madam He was flustered and exasperated. She even seemed a little deranged. She looked toward the north and said with an awe-inspiring expression, "We'll escape to the plains. There are still several hundred tribes and several 100,000 Bao-controlling soldiers there. With our Prince Xian Manor's reputation in the plains, it's not impossible to preserve the seeds of hope and wait for the future." However, Fong Tao secretly urged, "Ani, time is limited. Let's go. It's up to you." Therefore, Fong Tao brought more than 10 elderly, young, women, and children, as well as more than 20 men of sacrifice who were at the very center, and directly walked towards the tunnel of the prince's mansion, preparing to walk towards the exit outside the city through the tunnel. Before they actually walked into the tunnel, there were already sounds of killing coming from outside the prince's mansion. Capture the people from Prince Xian Manor and present them to the imperial court. Surrender if you don't want to die. Prince Xian is finished. Don't die with him. Hearing the series of shouts, sounds of fighting, and agonizing cries, the limbs of everyone from Prince Xian Manor turned cold, and their faces were filled with horror. If it was not because Fong Tao and Madam He had been suppressing everyone along the way, relying on their usual prestige to suppress everyone, this group would have collapsed long ago. Even so, soft sobbing sounds could be heard as the group walked in the tunnel. Although Fong Tao and Madam He's gazes were firm, there was still a hint of confusion in the depths of their eyes. By the time everyone walked out of the tunnel, the sounds of battle could already be heard from the direction of the city in the distance. There were even flames soaring into the sky. Fong Tao turned his head and looked over. He could see a large number of soldiers surging into the city from several tens of li away. The soldiers at the top of the city walls had long since disappeared, and even the city gates had been opened. Clearly, someone had opened the city gates and surrendered. The city has been breached. Fong Tao felt extremely bitter. This city, which the Prince Exine Manor had spent over 20 years to manage, had now changed hands so easily. This made him feel even more at a loss, as if he could not see where the future lay. Even if we escape to the plains, will we really have a chance? Fong Tao suppressed the doubts in the depths of his heart. He knew that he no longer had any other choice, so he turned and led the others to rush toward the north. However, before they could walk out of the small forest in front of them, a rain of arrows had already landed in front of them. Amidst the screams of women and children, hundreds of soldiers in black armor and bows slowly walked out of the shadows. From the looks of it, they had surrounded Fong Tao and the others. Fong Tao looked at the few people in the lead, and his countenance instantly turned extremely cold. Old Lu, Old Li, and you, Fong Yong, what are you guys trying to do? These people were clearly the elders of the great generals and ministers under Prince Exine Manor in the past. Fong Yong, who looked thin and weak, was the son of Prince Exine Manor's concubine. When he came of age, he was chased out of the clan and was now in charge of some of the clan's businesses. Hearing Fong Tao's question, the few elders fell silent. However, the killing intent in their eyes grew increasingly intense. Only Fong Yong smiled coldly and said, "Brother Tao, what's the point of saying all this now?" He cupped his hands in the direction of the divine capital and said respectfully, "Right now, the sacred Son of Heaven is skilled in both literature and martial arts. He's revered by the people and commands great prestige in the world. Our great Jin dynasty is also showing signs of resurgence. It's just that you guys are short-sighted and don't know what's going to happen. To think that you're thinking of going against heaven's might. How can this do?" Fong Tao said furiously. "You want to capture us and present us to the imperial court? Fong Yong, have you forgotten that you're also a member of the Prince Manor? Our blood also flows in your veins." Madam, he knocked her walking stick and rebuked furiously. "Be **starred. Are you trying to kill your brothers and go against your mother?" Fong Yong smiled coldly. "Have you guys ever treated me as one of your own? Since young, I've only been a follower. When I grew up, I was just your servant. I was destined to be inferior to you guys from the moment I was born. It's because my mother was just a maid without any status and couldn't enter the ancestral hall. Haha, now that you're facing great trouble, you're thinking of me, your younger brother? All right, let's not talk to them anymore." The Liu clan's elder waved his hand and said, "General Ma has already entered the city. It's time for us to go and welcome him." At the next moment, swoosh, swoosh, swoosh sounds of flying arrows rang out incessantly. Streams of cold light flashed incessantly in the forest, and blood splattered, and agonizing cries kept on ringing out. Over half of Fong Tao's death warriors had died under the chaotic arrows. Fong Tao let out a furious bellow, and the essential qi around him exploded explosively. However, he was sent back by the over 10 metal swords that came gushing toward him. 5 Disha realm experts and several hundred Xiantian realm experts connected their essential qis to form a qi field that came pressing down. Although Fong Tao tried his best, he was still unable to fend them off. Under the chaotic arrows, agonizing cries rang out incessantly. Very soon, most of the women and children had fallen into pools of blood. Madam, he let out a shrill cry, and the cane in her hand danced like a ball of light and shadow, blocking all the arrows. She was clearly a Disha realm expert who had cleared up 5 acupuncture points. It was unknown how many spiritual pills and miraculous medicines she had consumed. The Liu clan's elder frowned, picked up a longbow at the side, and channeled the essential qi in his body into the arrow. A soft swoosh rang out, and it was as if a black line had cut across the air, piercing through Madame He's body. She let out an agonizing cry and eventually fell to the ground with an unresigned expression, gradually losing all signs of life. Fong Tao let out an enraged bellow as he watched everyone fall into pools of blood one after another. However, at the next moment, numerous sharp swords pierced into the major acupoints all over his body, rendering him unable to move at all. Fang Yong looked coldly at Fang Tao, who kept on struggling and bleeding incessantly, and said calmly, "Spare his life. Chop off the heads of the other rebels. We can bring them back to verify their identities and offer them to the Emperor." Chapter 1054. Fang Tao was pushed back in the direction of Northgard City. Along the way, he kept on struggling, but this only caused his blood to flow even faster. Even the acupuncture points on his body started to shatter, and he was in a semi-conscious state. However, in this semi-conscious state, Fang Tao entered an extremely mysterious state. There seemed to be countless sounds in the world ringing into his ears incessantly. In his consciousness, a martial arts secret manual slowly took form. This is... Fang Tao focused his attention and barely managed to make out a string of words written on it. Electromagnetic drive? A supreme martial arts legacy that came from a mysterious person. Finally, as the hostility from the world's will grew stronger, another heaven-blessed cultivator was born. In the original Prince Exian Manor in Northgard City, the extremely luxurious Prince Manor had now turned into a pile of broken walls. The enraged crowd charged in, burning, killing, and looting. It was only when the prince arrived that the violent act stopped. Stepping in void space, the prince's gaze, which had been sweeping toward the Prince Manor, changed slightly. She turned to look in the direction of the city's suburbs. The feeling earlier is very similar to that guy from the Three Mountains, Four Peaks. The prince took a step forward and arrived at the city's suburbs. However, she could only see the corpses of several hundred soldiers. All of them had been killed with a single attack, and their gazes were still filled with confusion and astonishment before they died. The prince's eyes narrowed slightly, and a weak heartbeat rang out in her ears. With a flick of her finger, Fang Yong's body was grabbed and brought before her across space. His heart is in the wrong place. It's no wonder that he can survive. But if this goes on, he'll die soon. Therefore, the prince tapped out with her finger, and streams of golden light were channeled into Fang Yong's body, ceaselessly repairing it. With her realm at Tier 6 of the divine level, it was too easy for the prince to repair a human body. After being repaired by her, Fang Yong's physical body would even become stronger than before. Very soon, Fang Yong opened his eyes abruptly and could not help but struggle in midair. The prince said calmly, "Don't move if you don't wish to die." Fang Yong immediately reacted. After seeing the prince, he heaved a sigh of relief. "General Ma?" The prince said, "Tell me what's going on. Are the people who killed these soldiers from the Three Mountains, Four Peaks?" Fang Yong shook his head and said in disbelief, "It's Fang Tao." Seeing that the prince was in a daze, he added, "It's Prince Exian's third son. He brought people with him and wanted to escape. We came to capture him, wanting to offer him to His Majesty. Everything was fine at the start, and we've already captured him. But I don't know what happened, but he suddenly started to fight back, and his strength suddenly increased by a lot. He killed a lot of people." Lowering his head to look at the corpses on the battlefield, Fang Yong's face paled. He could not help but ask, "Who else survived?" "You're the only one who survived." The prince wore a puzzled look. If he wasn't from the Three Mountains, Four Peaks, then Fang Tao. On the other side, Fang Tao was fleeing rapidly through the mountain forest. From time to time, bolts of lightning would flash around him, and his speed was extremely fast. Wherever he passed by, there would be a series of thunderous explosions and sonic booms. In his mind, the cultivation technique known as electromagnetic drive continued to circulate. That domineering power crippled all the essential chi and cultivation in his body. However, he did not become weaker. Instead, he became even stronger. The electromagnetic forces in his body, which were cultivated from electromagnetic drive, continued to circulate. Although Fang Tao did not understand most of the principles behind it, he could sense that this was a power that was even more compatible with nature and the world than essential chi and gang chis. It was also even more powerful. All right, with this divine art, there'll be hope for me to take revenge. Fang Tao looked in the direction of the divine capital, and the flames of hatred burned in his eyes. Fang Xian, you wiped out my entire clan, so I'll wipe out your country. I'll let you know what true pain is. As Fang Tao became a heaven-blessed cultivator, the activity of the powers in the world seemed to become even more frequent. Across the vast Middle-earth, many cultivators with outstanding aptitudes suddenly discovered that all sorts of astonishing martial arts had been born in their consciousness. As Fang Xinjian suppressed and sealed Blood Sea beyond the Great Wall, not only did all sorts of obstructive forces appear in the world, but even more heaven-blessed cultivators who harbored enmity toward Fang Xinjian also started to appear. It was like the immune system of the human body, wanting to completely crush Fang Xinjian, who was an external entity, or push him out of this world. However, these heaven-blessed cultivators also needed time to cultivate, and they were temporarily unable to pose a direct threat to the imperial court. As Northgard City was taken down by the prince, the entire Beiyuan region once again returned to the imperial court's hands. The Great Jin dynasty controlled 3 regions and once again became the strongest influence in the world. However, as the imperial court rose in power, many rumors started to circulate in the world. The imperial court was already controlled by the demon sect. The emperor had become a puppet of the illusory emotions path. The emperor was addicted to the beauty of the illusory emotions path's demonic lady. All sorts of rumors that were not beneficial to the imperial court were being spread out. The reason for this was naturally because the 3 mountains, 4 peaks were fanning the flames. This organization that had been rooted in Middle-earth for several centuries contained far too astonishing power. As the 3 mountains, 4 peaks built up their influence, the various influences stopped fighting completely. Envoys came and went frequently, and the entire Middle-earth seemed to be in a temporary state of peace. In the divine capital, the prince looked at Fang Xinjian, who was in the study, and said impatiently, "How much longer are we going to wait for? The people in the south are just short of pointing at your nose and scolding you." The prince had wanted to lead a team to the south and kill the 3 mountains, 4 peaks, sex the moment she returned to the capital. She still remembered how Xiao Shan had teased her previously. However, Fang Xinjian had pacified her time and time again. Now that the public opinion in the south was getting increasingly bad toward them, the prince's patience was gradually reaching its limits. Hearing the prince's question, Fang Xinjian replied, "With the existence of the world's hostility, it's too dangerous to go head-on. Moreover, the person you're talking about should be the 3 mountains, 4 peaks, heaven-blessed cultivator, Xiao Shan. Based on my research, heaven-blessed cultivators should be the embodiment of this world's heavenly will. They're existences that are connected to the world's will and can learn any martial arts that exist in the planet's past and future. They even have an advantage that surpasses ordinary people when it comes to attaining the great Tao realm. They can be said to be people like Destiny's children. If you really kill him, you might be expelled from this world. If that's really the case, you might never be able to return. The 3 mountains, 4 peaks might not have just one heaven-blessed cultivator and great Tao realm cultivator. The person you met in the Beiyuan region previously might be a heaven-blessed cultivator who has just awakened." Fang Xinjian said calmly, "You should have already discovered that our sudden inspiration is unable to sense heaven-blessed cultivators. This is because the entire world is protecting them." Chapter 1055. Then are we just going to sit here and wait for death? Prince said, "They might be getting stronger with every passing moment. Moreover, if it's like what you said, we'll never be able to take action against them." Saying this, Prince gritted his teeth. "Don't worry. I've already thought of a countermeasure," Fang Xinjian said. Prince asked, "What's the countermeasure?" "Let the locals deal with the locals." Fang Xinjian saw that Prince still seemed like he wanted to continue asking and shook his head. "Forget it. I'll bring you over to take a look." At the next moment, the two of them disappeared into void space with a flash. Half an hour later, at the borders of the Ding region in the south of Middle-earth, in a military camp that belonged to Prince Ding of the South, the atmosphere was very relaxed. Regardless of whether it was the sentries, the cultivators who were training, or the ordinary soldiers who were resting. All of them wore dispirited expressions. Damn it, we've been doing field training for almost a month. When on Earth will it end? There's no helping it. We don't know when the Imperial Court will attack. I heard that Fang Xian has been seduced by the demonic lady from the demon sect. Hee hee, I heard that the demonic lady from the demon sect is even more beautiful than the top hostess of the flower-scattering brothel. If it were me, I'd do the same. A few old soldiers laughed out loud. Although Prince Ding had long since brought out his troops and were constantly on guard, looking ready to set off, Ding region was too far away from the divine capital after all. There were also the 18 feudal vassals in the middle. These lower-ranked soldiers had it too easy, and their wariness was much worse than that of the soldiers in the north. Over 10 kilometers away from the military camp, a group of 20 people appeared in the forest as a series of flashes flashed past. They wore black exoskeleton armors and held electromagnetic rifles. They were like warriors from the future in science fiction novels. These people have been selected by Fang Xinjiang from the Forbidden Army to specially experiment with new weapons. Among the many pieces of equipment that Fang Xinjiang planned to produce, the exoskeleton armor and electromagnetic rifle before him were clearly the simplest. They were also the first weapons that he produced. Looking at the Forbidden Army's warriors in the forest, the prince frowned slightly. She scanned the exoskeleton armors and electromagnetic rifles with her martial will. Although she was able to understand their structure, she was still unable to figure out the principles and prowess of these weapons. After all, she had never been to a world with high technology, so she knew nothing about this type of weapon. So the prince asked directly, "What is this? What are you doing?" "This is a weapon I developed for Xiantian realm warriors. This can be considered an experiment. I hope that the 20 of them can annihilate the 800 Xiantian realm warriors in the military camp." At the same level, 20 people defeated 800 people. The prince's brows twitched, and she scanned their bodies with her martial will once again. However, she did not discover any special powers or special aptitudes. She was unable to see any possibility of winning. So the prince said bluntly, "Are you crazy? You're sending them to their deaths." She said, feeling a little puzzled, "The armors they're wearing aren't bad and are very sturdy, but they won't be able to fend off the attacks of 800 Xiantian realm warriors in turns." Fang Xinjiang merely nudged his lips in the direction of the military camp and said, "You'll know when you see it." Simultaneously, the armored team had already stopped several thousand meters away from the military camp. The leader of the Forbidden Army's soldiers was called Wang Tian. Right now, his expression was solemn, and he communicated with the others through the communication device. "Stop." The youngest Forbidden Army's warrior said a little unconfidently, "What should we do? There are several hundred of them." It had only been half an hour since they received the equipment they were wearing, and they did not even have any actual combat experience. They had only learned how to communicate and fire a gun, and this was the information Fang Xinjiang had sent into their minds. Right now, they only felt that the exoskeleton armors had increased their speed and strength a little, but they knew nothing about the prowess of the equipment they were wearing. However, they were pulled over by Fang Xinjiang, put on the equipment, and then told to kill the several hundred Xiantian realm warriors in the military camp. Right now, they were filled with terror. "Did you guys offend some important people?" A bearded man from the Forbidden Army said dejectedly, "There's an entire army on the other side. How are we supposed to fight them?" Another tall soldier also tossed his electromagnetic rifle onto the ground. "You want to rely on this to kill several hundred Xiantian realm warriors? What kind of joke is this? It's clear that someone is trying to make things difficult for us. Whoever wants to die can go ahead." Wang Tian frowned and said coldly, "Don't talk nonsense. You guys heard it, right? This is a decree personally issued by His Majesty. Are you guys going to question His Majesty's decision?" "We're not questioning His Majesty's decree." The tall soldier who had shouted out earlier suddenly became weak and said aggrievedly, "But this is clearly sending us to our deaths. Even His Majesty might have been deceived." Wang Tian looked at the other soldiers and asked in a deep voice, "Do you guys think the same as well?" No one replied, But the collective silence had already explained the answer. For 20 people to charge toward an army was simply suicidal. Wang Tian said slowly, "I know what you guys are worried about, but think about how we got here. His Majesty personally performed a great divine ability to send us here. Then think about the current situation in the divine capital. Those flat and wide roads. Those metal war chariots that can run on their own. There are also electric lamps that don't need to burn oil or candles, water taps that can produce water on their own, as well as sewers and toilets." With each sentence Wang Tian said, a hint of contemplation would appear in the gazes of the many soldiers present. "I believe in His Majesty. Moreover, even if we're really not a match for them, with His Majesty's means of sending us here, could it be that He won't be able to save us? Could it be that you guys have forgotten about General Marie's means?" At the mention of this, everyone's gazes lit up slightly. The many soldiers from the Forbidden Army had seen Feng Xinjian's and the prince's spatial translocation many times and were extremely impressed by this great divine ability. Therefore, after Wang Tian said this, most of the soldiers immediately agreed with him. The bearded man nodded and said, "What you said makes sense. I'll do it." The tall man also picked up the electromagnetic rifle on the ground. Although there was still hesitation in his eyes, he also said, "What you said makes sense." The other soldiers also expressed their agreement. Just then, the sound of horns and shouts rang out in the military camp. "Enemy attack! Enemy attack! Everyone gather! Follow me to kill the enemies." Seeing that over 800 Xiantian realm cultivators in the entire military camp had moved in unison, charging out with spears in their hands, the prince asked in astonishment, "What are you doing? If it's a sneak attack, there might still be a chance." "I'm not here to watch them sneak attack." Feng Xinjian retracted the finger he had used to send out a stream of sword chi earlier and said, "I want to test the effects of a head-on confrontation." Chapter 1056. Just as several hundred Xiantian realm cultivators dashed out from the military camp and headed toward the Forbidden Army's team, Wang Tian and the others felt their scalps turn numb when they saw the densely packed soldiers. "Damn it! How did they discover us? Run quickly. We won't be a match for them if we fight them head-on." Without another word, the 20 members of the Forbidden Army immediately started to flee. The exoskeleton armor effectively increased their strength, speed, and explosive prowess. Each of them brought along a series of afterimages as they dashed through the forest. "Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! I knew that someone was making a fool out of us. What should we do now?" Just as the 20-man Forbidden Army's team was being chased by Prince Ding's army, Prince Ding's army started to cry out like they had been injected with chicken blood. The 1 month of training had made their lives extremely dull. Now that there were finally some bandits attacking them, they would naturally want to have some fun. The general leading the team, Qian Jinzhong, ran at the very front. He was the highest commanding officer in this team and was also a Xiantian realm cultivator. He had even cleared all 8 extraordinary meridians and was only a step away from the Disha realm. However, this step was like a heavenly moat. Without the Disha realm's aperture training method, he would never be able to attain a breakthrough in his entire life. Therefore, when he saw the escaping Forbidden Army's warriors, his eyes gleamed with greed. Although the other party was wearing heavy armor, and Qian Jinzhong could not tell which army they were from, they were sneakily hiding in the surroundings of the military camp and immediately escaping upon seeing them. Qian Jinzhong was certain that this group of people were enemy spies. "All right, it'll be a great merit if we can capture this group of enemy spies. When the time comes, I'll try to smooth things over, and I might be able to get the higher-ups to bestow me with the secret aperture training method." At the thought of this, a hint of excitement flashed on Qian Jinzhong's face. He let out a long bellow, and the essential qi in his body burst forth. He then turned into a bolt of lightning and got close to Wang Tian and the others. Hearing the long bellow, the countenances of Wang Tian and the others changed. What great power! This person is probably only a step away from the Disha realm. At the next moment, a cold gleam flashed, and the black spear tip suddenly appeared before Wang Tian. Wang Tian let out a loud bellow and instinctively used the battle method he was most proficient in. He slashed out the electromagnetic rifle in his hand like a long sword, blocking the spear tip. An explosive boom rang out, and the tip of the spear clashed fiercely against the electromagnetic rifle's barrel. The electromagnetic rifle was knocked away, and even its barrel was slightly bent from the impact. Wang Tian himself was sent flying along with his exoskeleton armor. He rolled on the ground like a bottle gourd, knocking over 10 large trees along the way. Although the Forbidden Army's warriors in the surroundings were shocked and terrified, they still charged forward instinctively, wanting to save Wang Tian and fend off Qian Jinzhong's attack. However, Qian Jinzhong displayed his outstanding spear techniques and lightness skills. With a flash of a spear in his hand, it was as if a net of black lightning had formed and burst out. The Forbidden Army members around him were all whipped out and kept spinning like gyroscopes. With a swoosh, Qian Jinzhong appeared before Wang Tian amidst the whistling sounds of the wind. The long spear in his hand trembled, and a cold gleam once again pierced out toward Wang Tian. At the next moment, clanging sounds rang out, and the spear tip clashed against the exoskeleton armor, erupting a series of sparks. Seeing that Wang Tian's armor had fended off his attack, Qian Jinzhong revealed a hint of surprise. However, he soon turned the spear tip again, wanting to attack Wang Tian once again. Just then, streams of ripples seemed to appear in the air, and a series of soft sounds rang out from Qian Jinzhong's body. At the next moment, his body came to an abrupt stop, standing on the spot without moving. His body was stiff, and there was a hint of disbelief on his face. Unbeknownst to him, there were already more than 10 large holes in his chest. His entire body was like a hornet's nest, and with a thud, he fell to the ground, dead. After the depleted uranium armor-piercing bullet pierced through his body, it collided into the ground. It instantly produced an extremely strong impact force and a high temperature of over 6,000 degrees Celsius, causing astonishing damage. Wang Tian looked at Qian Jinzhong, who had stopped, and shouted, "What's going on?" I was the one who fired the shot." The bearded man looked at Qian Jinzhong's corpse in disbelief. He then looked at the wreckage on the ground, and then looked at the electromagnetic rifle in his hand. It was as if he found it hard to believe the prowess of this weapon. When Prince Ding's troops saw that Qian Jinzhong had been killed, their eyes immediately turned bloodshot. They charged over while bellowing, wanting to tear Wang Tian and the others into shreds. However, the bearded man raised his electromagnetic rifle, aimed it through the scope, and pulled the trigger according to the method and the information Feng Xingzhan had given him. An undetectable tremor rang out from the gunshot. At the next second, many depleted uranium armor-piercing bullets passed through the air and struck the bodies of many soldiers. They instantly pierced through their bodies and turned them into a mist of blood. When the bullets reached the end, they exploded with a high temperature of over 6,000 degrees Celsius, forming a stretch of smoke and dust, causing a second casualty. At this moment, the terrifying prowess of the electromagnetic rifle, coupled with the depleted uranium armor-piercing bullets, was displayed vividly. The armor-piercing bullets, which could penetrate through tank armor, were accelerated to 5 times that of supersonic speed. The terrifying kinetic energy was sufficient to tear apart all flesh, and the nuclear waste within them would heat up and explode after hitting the target. These Xiantian realm experts were unable to fend off the electromagnetic rifle's prowess. In the blink of an eye, the bearded man sprayed the bullets, and over 5 Xiantian realm cultivators fell to the ground. Both the bearded man and the other Forbidden Army warriors looked at this scene in astonishment. Then they raised the electromagnetic rifles in their hands. A terrifying metallic tempest instantly engulfed the troops before them. The astonishing collision force and the high-temperature explosions of over 6,000 degrees Celsius tore the bodies of many soldiers apart. However, the soldiers who had their bodies pierced through by the bullets could be considered lucky. It was because at the very least, the burning and explosion of the nuclear waste would not happen to them. Ha ha! This weapon is amazing. Seeing that the enemies were being harvested like wheat, the bearded man cried out in excitement. The tall man kept on shooting. Seeing the Sciention realm cultivators falling to his gun, a hint of excitement flashed on his face. Kill them all. Compared to the excitement on the Forbidden Army's side, Prince Ding's troops broke down completely after paying the price of over 100 casualties. Seeing their comrades being knocked down and torn apart by waves of invisible forces and all sorts of explosions happening out of thin air, some people finally could not take it anymore and started to flee. Then the entire army collapsed. Fang Xingjian looked at the battlefield that had turned into a slaughterhouse and evaluated the performance of the electromagnetic rifles and exoskeleton armors. We need to pair them with some melee equipment, and the user's qualities also need to be raised. It seems that it's not enough to just channel in knowledge. We still need actual combat, the prince frowned. It's true that this weapon of yours is of some use against Sciention realm cultivators and Disha realm cultivators, but it's probably useless against the people from the Three Mountains, Four Peaks. Chapter 1057. Hearing Prince's question, Fang Xingjian said, "Don't worry. We have weapons to deal with Sciention realm cultivators. Disha, Tiangang, and Great Dao cultivators will naturally have weapons to deal with them as well." As he said that, a hint of sword intent rose up from his fingertip. It was the light pursuit sword intent. Today is the day for exchanging martial techniques again, right? Prince nodded, and a stream of light shot out from her forehead, shooting into Fang Xingjian's consciousness. An hour later, the battle on the other side came to an end completely. Fang Xingjian and Prince also sent the victorious Forbidden Army team back to the Divine Capital. Wang Tian and the others only felt a flash of light and shadow, and they appeared in a factory that was made purely from metal. Right now, Fang Xingjian's factory was even more advanced than before. Many cuttlefish-like robots were flying around, their tentacles carrying out modifications and manufacturing work. Many machine tools, instruments, spare parts, and production lines were rapidly formed in their hands, causing Wang Tian and the others to be in a daze. If their gazes could pass through the metal armor plates and underground soil, they would be able to discover that the underground factory had become like a huge hornet's nest. There were densely packed mechanical cuttlefish working everywhere. These mechanical soldiers that the Divine Emperor had created in the past were now being used by Fang Xingjian as workers. This would free up his powers to do some more important things, such as creating the Universe Night system and androids, deriving the Great Tao's testimony, and cultivating the Royal Heavenly Great Art. After Wang Tian and the others appeared in the factory, the ground before them suddenly formed many cylindrical spaces. "Go in." Fang Xingjian's voice rang out in their minds, and Wang Tian and the others immediately entered the cylindrical spaces. Then, under their nervous gazes, many mechanical arms reached out from the spaces and quickly removed their exoskeleton armors and electromagnetic rifles. In the blink of an eye, these Forbidden Army warriors who had been armed to the teeth once again turned into ordinary people. When they walked down from the cylindrical spaces, their minds were still a little dazed. Fang Xingjian's voice continued to ring out in their minds. "You'll be staying here for the next few months to help me test out some new weapons. If you have any requests, you can raise them now." What awaited them next was a long period of training to enhance the application of the electromagnetic rifle and exoskeleton armor. At the same time, they would also be allowed to test other new weapons. With regards to this rare opportunity, everyone present responded positively. To be able to become a member of the troops, personally led by the Emperor, and be able to use a terrifying weapon like the electromagnetic rifle, they were all very willing. This experimental unit was named the Sharp Sword by Fang Xingjian, and it was specifically for him to test the latest cutting-edge weapons. Therefore, following this, battlefields of various sizes were scattered across the territories of the various great influences in Middle-earth. As Fang Xingjian sent out the Sharp Swords teams time and time again, It immediately attracted the attention of the Three Mountains, Four Peaks. In a forest in the Min province, there were broken corpses and broken armors everywhere. This was the territory of the world's #1 rebel, Liangbo, and these corpses were naturally the troops under Liangbo. However, most of them had been torn into pieces, and a small portion of them had large areas of their bodies carbonized, burned into mummies. Looking at these corpses, Xiao Shun frowned once again. A young man next to him could not help but vomit. As the young man vomited, he cursed, "What the hell are they doing? It's one thing to kill people, but why do they have to make it so disgusting?" Xiao Shun's gaze swept past the many corpses. Suddenly, he reached out and grabbed a broken piece of shrapnel in his hand. "This thing again," Xiao Shun said. "They didn't do it on purpose to turn them into minced meat. It's just that their weapons would cause such an outcome." "Weapons?" the young man asked, puzzled. In the past month, a total of 21 similar incidents have happened in the various regions in Middle-earth. "It's a group of people wearing black armor who have been attacking the various armies," Xiao Shun said, waving the shrapnel in his hand. "These are the unique hidden weapons they perform. There aren't many of them, only about 10 to 20 people. Each time, they'll take the initiative to attack several hundred or even over 1,000 troops, killing a large number of Xiantian realm cultivators before leaving." "Who is so daring? Does he want to wage war against the entire world?" Xiao Shun shook his head. "Only the Serene, Jing, and Beiyuan regions haven't suffered from similar attacks. In the other regions, the death toll has already accumulated to over 10,000. It's the imperial court, killing over 10,000 people with just over 10 people. It must be a sharp team formed by Disha realm experts, right?" Hearing this news, a faint gleam flashed in the young man's eyes. That Fang Xian is really trying to find any doctor he can find in a desperate situation? Starting a war recklessly and killing people casually will only make everyone his enemy." Xiao Shan nodded. Logically speaking, this seemed to be the case. However, his instincts seemed to be constantly warning him. There seemed to be a voice in the world telling him that things were not that simple. However, when he looked at the young man next to him, a hint of joy finally broke out on his face. The other party was a heaven-blessed cultivator that the Three Mountains, Four Peaks had discovered in Min region. Therefore, Xiao Shun had rushed over and found the other party. After a series of tests, he ascertained that the other party was a heaven-blessed cultivator. At a critical moment like this, every heaven-blessed cultivator was a tremendous power. It was because they represented a future great Dao realm cultivator and would be able to increase their chances of winning in their fight against Fang Xian. Moreover, based on the latest news, there were also signs of new heaven-blessed cultivators appearing in many other places. This gave Xiao Shan more confidence in the future situation. Is the heavens helping us as well? As he pondered, he looked at the young man behind him and said, "Lori, I know that you have a feud with the great Jin dynasty's royal family. However, don't underestimate Fang Xian just because of hatred. This person's strength and shrewdness are both unfathomable. Ever since he ascended to the throne, he's putting great effort to govern the country, attacking Prince Xian in the north and subduing the demon sect outside. He's taken over 3 regions and became the world's #1 influence. Regardless of whether it's his martial arts or intellect, only the demon sect's first emperor from 300 years ago can be a match for him." Hearing this, although young Lori revealed a hint of reluctance on his face, he did not object. It was true that the achievements of the young emperor in the north during this period of time far surpassed that of ordinary people. Although he was unwilling to admit it verbally, he could not deny this in his heart. There's no need for you to be discouraged. Although this person's martial arts and intellect are strong, he's a militaristic person and is obstinate and self-opinionated. Right now, he's trying to rely on his clan's power to go against the world and the orthodox sects, but it's just wishful thinking. Moreover, with the appearance of heaven-blessed cultivators like you, even the heavens probably want to destroy him." Xiao Shan smiled. "Let's go. A few of your companions are waiting for us." You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.